LoveLore Library. Chapter 255. Lin Qiao followed that person and disappeared. In the next second, his claw directly stabbed into the captain's head, and then he forcefully twisted his wrist. The captain only felt that he was suddenly pulled while he was walking, and then his vision blurred. Before he could react, he felt a sharp pain in his head, and then he didn't know anything. He didn't know. He was just cursing those soldiers who turned into ice in his heart. They were all useless things, and caused his position in Yang Jianhua's heart to drop a lot. He thought that if Yang Jianhua didn't kill them, he would have killed them himself. It was because of this thought that Lin Qiao killed him first. This kind of person actually wanted to kill his subordinates, then in the future, he would definitely use his subordinates to block zombies. Because Lin Xiaolu was in the space, Lin Qiao chose the forest when he brought people in to kill. And his actions were clean, and there wasn't even a sound. After taking out the energy core from the skull, Lin Qiao carried the corpse and flashed out. Yang Jianhua, who was outside, didn't notice that there was suddenly a person missing, and suddenly heard a putong sound. He looked back and found that there was another corpse on the ground behind him. This was not killed by him. What happened? Yang Jianhua's face suddenly became gloomy. An icy aura emitted from his body, and the people around him couldn't help but take a step back. The others looked at him with a dumbfounded expression and replied, "Report." He just disappeared for a few seconds, and then suddenly became like this. Yang Jianhua stared at the corpse lying on the ground, and saw that other than the head that was cut open, the rest of the body was intact. "Come out, you can kill a level 5 psychic in a few seconds without making a sound. Don't you dare to show your real body. Or are you afraid of me?" He raised his eyes and glanced at the people around him. He said in a cold voice, "I'm afraid that I will scare you if I come out." Lin Qiao stood behind him and said faintly. Swish swish swish, everyone instantly turned around, and all kinds of gun skills and abilities were aimed at Yang Jianhua's back. They saw an unfamiliar baldy wearing sunglasses in the middle of the night, and they didn't know when he had stood behind Yang Jianhua. Yang Jianhua didn't panic. He just calmly turned around. He saw that the person standing behind him was only half a meter away from him. However, he had sensed this person's aura the moment it appeared. Because he didn't feel any killing intent, he calmly turned his head. Of course, if this person attacked as soon as he appeared. He also had the ability to sense it in time, so it wasn't difficult for him to avoid it. The first thing Yang Jianhua saw when he turned around was not Lin Qiao's bald head. It was her chest. A bald woman with big breasts. Judging from the shape of her chest, she was at least AD. Her waist was very thin and her legs were long. She was about 1.7 meters tall. Further up, on her slender neck, the skin was so white that it seemed to be emitting a faint white light. Her chin was exquisite, and her face was shaped like an oval. Even with sunglasses covering her eyes, he could tell that she was a very beautiful woman from her nose, lips, chin, and the shape of her face. Even if it was bald, it was round and cute. Lin Qiao looked at Yang Jianhua with a slightly disdainful gaze. She had a strong sense of what he was thinking. He was actually staring at her appearance and figure to calculate his score. As expected, he was a pervert. After sizing up Lin Qiao, Yang Jianhua suddenly smiled faintly. "I thought an ugly person would come out to scare me." "What? Do you think you can scare me with your bald head?" Lin Qiao didn't say anything more to him. She lowered her head slightly and took off her sunglasses. Then, she slowly raised her eyes and looked at him. Yang Jianhua was very curious about what her eyes looked like. However, when he saw a pair of eyes without any white, the entire eye socket was cold and dark. He was so shocked that he forgot to make a sound. After being stunned for 2 seconds, he suddenly took a few steps back. He pointed at Lin Qiao. You are not human. The moment Yang Jianhua stepped back, the other ability users and soldiers around him could clearly see Lin Qiao's pair of strange black eyes. Their reaction was the same as his, and they subconsciously took 2 steps back. Bang! Suddenly, someone overreacted and fiercely attacked Lin Qiao. At the same time, Lin Qiao raised her hand without turning her head. She grabbed the bullet in her hand and released her palm. Ding dash, the metal bullet fell on the tile floor and made a crisp sound. Lin Qiao didn't turn her head to look at the soldier who shot at her. Instead, a faint black gas came out of her palm. She went around the soldier. She looked at Yang Jianhua and said, "You are right. Is this the place for me? After staying here for so long, my patience is also limited. I didn't plan to attack you, but you seem to be preparing to attack my prey. I can't tolerate this." Yang Jianhua still hadn't digested it. He widened his eyes and looked at Lin Qiao in shock. He asked in disbelief, You are really a zombie?" He heard Lin Qiao's words very clearly. Territory, prey. Does it mean that this area is the territory of this zombie that can only speak the human language? Then the prey was Lin Feng and the others. Because Yang Jianhua was preparing to attack Lin Feng and the others. The prey you are talking about. Are you talking about Lin Feng and the others? Lin Qiao nodded. She played with the sunglasses in her hand and wiped them with the corner of her clothes. She looked down at the sunglasses and said, "What else? Is it you guys? I don't mind if you want to send yourself to my mouth. But I won't give up what I want to others. I have let you guys stay here for so long. That's enough respect." Yang Jianhua suddenly calmed down. This female zombie had such a high IQ and could talk. Moreover, it was able to come and go as it pleased, which meant that this zombie's level was at least above the zombie king level. It seemed that she had entered the level of a level 2 king zombie. But the other party's attitude didn't seem to be hostile towards him. That meant that he still had a chance, so the other party didn't have a reason to attack them. Yang Jianhua swallowed and said that. We haven't been here for long. It's only been 2 days. It hasn't been that long. And since Lin Feng and the others are your prey, we didn't know before. Now that we know, we won't fight with you. You can do whatever you want. We won't interfere. Facing a level 2 king zombie that might be a level 7 zombie, Yang Jianhua had to admit defeat. He didn't dare to be arrogant and think that he could beat a level 2 king zombie. He couldn't even beat a normal level 6 zombie king. However, he didn't know that he had been tricked by Lin Qiao. Lin Qiao looked at the scene in front of her with a gloomy expression. Her black fog had covered the piles of ice for a while, and she saw that the speed at which the ice was melting was very slow. At this moment, Lin Qiao suddenly felt a sudden chill on her back. She quickly turned around and nimbly flipped to the side of the wall. Then, in midair, she kicked the wall and did a somersault, leaping towards the window of the hall. When she turned around, she saw that the door and the surroundings where Yang Jianhua and the others went out were covered with a thick layer of ice. A cold and gloomy fog was emitted from the surface of the ice. I was almost fooled by you. You are not a zombie at all. Yang Jianhua's cold voice came from the door, and then saw him coming back from behind the door. At this time, a pair of charming eyes were filled with coldness as they stared at Lin Qiao, who was by the window. Lin Qiao chuckled. Sigh, I failed to show off. She jumped down from the window, looked at Yang Jianhua and said, Since you have already seen through it, why are you still acting with me? You really have nothing better to do. I just wanted to see what your purpose is, said Yang Jianhua with a faint smile. I didn't expect that you just want to drive me away. If they were really zombies, how could they let us go so easily? As he spoke, young Jianhua suddenly raised his hand and waved at Lin Qiao. A pile of ice arrows instantly condensed in the air and shot towards Lin Qiao in a densely packed manner. It was extremely fast and covered a large area. Lin Qiao flipped out of the window and leaped onto the windowsill to reach the rooftop. The ice arrows that shot out of the window fell to the ground. Young Jianhua's figure flashed and he also jumped out of the window. With a wave of his hand, he directly built an ice ladder from the window to the rooftop. He stepped on the ice ladder twice and jumped to the top of the building. It was pitch black on the rooftop. Lin Qiao stood at the corner of the building and said to young Jianhua, "Since you don't want to leave easily, then don't regret it." As she spoke, Lin Qiao jumped into the air before young Jianhua's ice quickly froze her feet. Then suddenly, she flashed and disappeared. Kacha kacha, the ground on the rooftop was largely frozen by young Jianhua's ice. If Lin Qiao hadn't jumped into the air, she would probably have been frozen. Seeing Lin Qiao suddenly disappear, young Jianhua stood at the edge of the rooftop and looked around. Then he closed his eyes and carefully sensed. He found that Lin Qiao's breath was indeed gone. Just as he opened his eyes, he suddenly dodged to the side and casually threw out a large amount of ice energy at his original position. A figure flashed past his previous position, but left behind a large amount of black gas that was frozen in the air by young Jianhua's ice. Bang, 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 kacha, kacha, the ice that froze the gas fell to the ground and broke into pieces. Chapter 257. Lin Qiao, who was hiding in a corner, looked at young Jianhua and could not help but sigh. Her attack did not have any effect on young Jianhua, but his senses were very sharp. It seemed that she could only wait and see. Young Jianhua stared at the black ice shards on his body, which were slowly melting. His ice was actually melted by this strange gas. It seemed that this gas was very corrosive. That metahuman with eyes as black as a zombie's, was he a poisonous gas-type metahuman? This type of metahuman was not easy to guard against. But it was not difficult to guard against them. Young Jianhua glanced around and then smiled coldly. "Although I don't know who you are, it seems that you are with Lin Feng and the others. Since you are the vanguard, it means that you have discovered us. I think Lin Feng and the others will not be able to come out." Lin Qiao did not appear, but stood quietly at the side and looked at him. Young Jianhua paused after saying that. He did not see Lin Qiao appear. He continued, "I know you are still here. Aren't you being held captive by that rank 6 metahuman? There are a large number of zombies surrounding 500 meters outside of your hotel. Even if you want to leave, you can't. And I see that your numbers have decreased. It seems that you have been eaten one by one." Ha! This person's brain was really big. He actually thought that way. Lin Qiao could not help but look at him with a smile. She knew that young Jianhua might have arrived 2 days ago. So after observing for the past 2 days, she noticed that Du Yuanxing, Yuan Tianxing, and the others were missing. Thinking about how he was attacked by Qiu Lily before, she actually thought that those people might have been eaten by Qiu Lily. Moreover, the surrounding zombies had blocked every entrance. Young Jianhua actually thought that they were there to block Lin Feng and the others. To think that he could actually think of that. But from another perspective, it was normal for people who did not know the inside story to think that way. Moreover, Qiu Lily often moved around on the roof, her whereabouts were uncertain. Indeed, it was a bit like the owner of a cow or sheep. So this was what this person had been observing for the past 2 days. Lin Qiao squatted on the wall by the side of the building while young Jianhua continued to talk to himself. "What, you don't dare to come out? I felt that you were here. You even dared to show yourself just now. What's going on now? At this moment, a soldier covered in wounds suddenly staggered up from the stairs. Then, he went up to the captains who were standing at the top of the stairs and said a few words. Then, the faces of these captains changed drastically. Leader. Oh no, our chariots are gone. One of the team leaders immediately turned to young Jianhua and shouted. Young Jianhua immediately turned his head to look at them, and a cold aura rushed towards them. He narrowed his eyes and slowly walked towards them with his long legs. What did you say? The people at the staircase immediately gave way to the soldier. The soldier's body was covered with wounds and was dripping with blood. However, these wounds were all caused by scratches or bites. He gasped weakly and said, We were suddenly knocked out. When we woke up, we saw the cars were gone. We were surrounded by zombies. When everyone heard this, they looked at the many wounds on his body and his pale face. Everyone knew that this soldier was hopeless. However, young Jianhua said, You were bitten by zombies. Then, before everyone could understand what he meant, they saw that the soldier was quickly frozen into an ice sculpture. Young Jianhua looked back at the empty rooftop and said with a gloomy face, So that's what you wanted. Lin Qiao raised his eyebrows, then gently flipped out of the building and floated down. When they returned to the hotel, Lin Feng and the other three were waiting in the room. When they saw Lin Qiao return, they immediately stood up from their chairs. How is it? Is it really young Jianhua? Lin Qiao looked at them and said, I think young Jianhua will be here soon. I'll take you into the space to hide. I'll let you meet some people. Then, he walked forward and pulled Lin Feng and Lin Hao into the space. As soon as they entered, they saw a group of people sitting on the sofa and chatting enthusiastically. Lin Qiao left the two people behind and flashed out again. Then, he brought Long Qingying and Xie Dong in. When they came in, they saw Lin Feng and Li Jing staring at each other. Li Zhang. You. Why are you here? Looking at Li Zhang, Feng Mingyu, Lei Yao and Fei Chonglin, Lin Feng couldn't believe his eyes. Captain. We are relieved to see that you are all fine. Li Zhang and the others also stood up and looked at Lin Feng excitedly. Mrs. Lin laughs, Didn't I tell you that we're all fine? But you are the only ones left in your team. Lin Qiao looked into the space but didn't see Lu Jun and Tong Tong. After a while, he found that they were hiding in the small space over there. Because they didn't come out, Mrs. Lin and Li Xing didn't know that there were people in the small space over there. They didn't notice that there was a small space over there. Lin Feng asked in shock, Mom. Why are they here? Mrs. Lin smiled and said, Why are you asking me? Shouldn't you be asking Miss Lu? Lin Feng finally realized what was going on and wanted to ask Lin Qiao. However, he looked around but didn't see anyone. He only saw Long Qingying and Xie Dong walking to the lake. What? Where did she go? Li Zheng said, Captain, please sit down first. I can explain it to you. He pointed to Huang Ming and said, This is Captain Huang Ming under Deputy Leader Xiao of High City Base. Lin Feng didn't expect that there were people from High City Base here. He looked at Huang Ming in surprise. Huang Ming smiled and waved his hand. He said with some embarrassment, Oh, no. Just call me Huang Ming. Don't call me Captain. Lin Feng nodded and his face was not so serious. He said with a faint smile, You are also a level 5 paranormal like Li Zheng. It's normal for you to be a captain in the base. Don't be modest. They all sat down on the sofa and stood up. Li Zheng said, We met young Jianhua 2 days ago and were subdued by him without any explanation. Then, he was brought here. He told us a lot about the base and the leader proudly. Li Zheng and Feng Mingyu didn't look so good when he said this. Lin Feng and the others could roughly guess what Yang Jianhua was talking about. Anyway, it wasn't what they wanted to hear. We were tied up and followed them here. Just now, we were on the roof of a building in a community. We were all pressed against the wall and didn't know what happened. Suddenly, we were pulled. When we came back to our senses, we were already here. Chapter 258. From what he said, Lin Feng also guessed what was going on. He thought about the bald female zombie's behavior. Well, she would steal people away secretly. It wasn't the first time. But this time, he had to admit that it was a good steal. Mrs. Lin said, yes, when they were thrown in, they were tied up. We didn't know what was going on. Li Zheng said doubtfully, but Miss Lu is really a zombie. At this time, Li Zheng said with some doubt, but that Miss Lu is really a zombie. She doesn't know us. You don't know that we were caught by Yang Jianhua. Mrs. Lin said curiously, yes, I'm curious about that too. Mrs. Lin also said curiously, yes, I'm curious about that too. Lin Feng looked left and right again and asked, hey, where is she? Lin Qiao had already sensed that they were looking for her, so she walked out of the pocket space. Lin Qiao had long sensed that they were looking for him, so he walked out of the small space. Looking for me. Looking for me. Everyone looked at her and saw that she was wearing a pair of sunglasses on her shiny bald head. If it weren't for her chest, it would be hard to tell her gender. Lin Feng turned his head and looked in that direction. Only then did he realize that there seemed to be a cave-like space there. His attention was immediately diverted. Hey, is there another space over there? Lin Qiao nodded and said, yes, is there a problem? It was the first time she heard that there was a compartment in this space. Lin Feng shook his head, no problem. Oh, we wanted to ask why you wanted to save Li Zheng and the others when you saw them. Did you know that they knew each other? Lin Qiao shook her head, I didn't know. I just thought that Yang Jianhua's enemy should be our friend. He should be a friend from our side, so in order to make things difficult for him, I'm sure he's from our side. Who knew that you knew each other? Lin Feng turned around and said to Li Zheng, did you know? Tianqing brought a few brothers to the high city base to find more people and also to look for your team. Tianqing even brought a few brothers to the Sea City base. On one hand, he was there to look for more manpower. On the other hand, he was looking for your team. Li Zheng said, Tianqing brought a few brothers to the high city base. So even if we didn't meet Yang Jianhua, the deputy leader wouldn't be able to find us. So even if we didn't meet Yang Jianhua, the deputy leader wouldn't be able to find us. Lin Feng and the others nodded and said, that's true. But why aren't you in the base? Why did you come out? Mrs. Lin says, oh, I'll help them. They came out to look for us, but they didn't know the route we took. Therefore, he took a detour to the neighboring city. They couldn't find us for more than half a month. I didn't expect to bump into Yang Jianhua's motorcade. Lin Feng sighed and said, then we can only wait for Tianqing to return. By the way, how many people are left in your team? As he spoke, Lin Feng looked at Li Zheng. Li Zheng lowered his head dejectedly and sighed as he replied, now, other than the four of us here, there is still Lin Yu. It was unknown if he had returned to Sea City or if he was still surviving on his own outside. He wasn't there when we were discovered by Yang Jianhua. Later, he probably went into hiding, so he wasn't discovered by Yang Jianhua. Lin Feng thought about it and asked uncertainly, Lin Yu doesn't have any special abilities, right? I remember that only a few of you have abilities in your team. I didn't expect that there would only be a few of you left out of the 20 of you. Li Zheng said, yes, it's him. The others were sacrificed. We couldn't do anything about it. There were too many zombies along the way, and we even encountered a level 5 zombie leader. They gave up their lives to create a chance for us to escape. The more he spoke, the lower Li Zheng's voice became, and his eyes slowly lowered. Feng Mingyu and Lei Yao's expressions became as heavy as his. Seeing that the atmosphere didn't seem to be good, Lin Feng and the others looked at each other. He quickly changed the topic. Oh, right. I forgot to introduce you guys. Do you know who Miss Liu is? Li Zheng looked up and saw that Lin Feng was pointing at Lin Qiao, who was watching the scene. He nodded and said, yes, she is a zombie. Although I don't believe that she is really a zombie. Lin Qiao bared her teeth at him and said, do you want me to bite you? Li Zheng looked at the 4 protruding teeth in her mouth and said quietly, aren't you a zombie? At this time, Feng Mingyu asked, is there a difference between zombies and zombies? The others immediately looked at him and said, of course there is. Feng Mingyu asked with a confused face, what is it? The others said, zombies, zombies, but they suddenly couldn't tell what the difference was. Yes, zombies have corpse poison. They will also become zombies after biting people. And zombies have virus. They will also become zombies after biting people. They seem to be almost the same. Are you stupid? Zombies are afraid of sunlight, but are zombies afraid of sunlight? Zombies eat human flesh and bones. Have you ever heard of zombies eating human flesh and bones? Oh no, no. Are you an idiot or what? Do zombies really exist? Have you seen one? Lin Qiao said speechlessly. The others were speechless. Feng Mingyu looked at Lin Qiao, who suddenly called him stupid, and then secretly poked Lei Yao, who was next to her. He said in a low voice, why do I feel that? Her tone is a bit like our leader. If the leader was here, he would definitely say the same thing. Lei Yao glanced at him and then at Lin Qiao. His eyes flashed slightly, but he didn't say anything. Lin Qiao looked at everyone and said, you guys are talking about this topic quite happily. Don't you want to know Yang Jianhua's current situation? As soon as she said this, everyone immediately looked at her. Lin Feng also came to his senses. By the way, you stole Li Zheng and the others. What was Yang Jianhua's reaction? Lin Qiao said lightly, he froze 7 or 8 guards into ice sculptures and then smashed them into pieces. Mrs. Lin's eyes widened in surprise and said, what? He killed them just like that? They were his people. How could he be so cruel? Cheng Wangshue said, Mom, he was just too good at pretending before. He is not a good person. Lin Qiao said, he planned to do something to you tonight. It seems that he wanted to use them to provoke you. But now that I've rescued him, his plan has been ruined. She said as she looked at Li Zheng and the others. Mrs. Lin said with a cold face, he is so despicable. Cheng Wangshue sighed and said, well, Mom, now you know what kind of person he is. Someone will deal with this kind of scum. Lin Qiao said, he thinks that you are all food kept in captivity by Lily. And he thinks that Yuan Tianqing and the others have already been eaten. Everyone was surprised, but Li Zheng and the others were confused. Who is Lily? Will she eat people? Is she also a zombie? Seeing the confused expressions of Li Zheng and the others, Lin Hao, who had been silent, suddenly said, yes, it is exactly what you think. Lily is a zombie, and she is the king of zombies. She will eat people. The others were speechless. Chapter 259. Lin Feng looked at her and asked, then what happened? Lin Qiao said, I fought with him but I couldn't beat him. So I came back. Let me see. Then she closed her eyes and sensed the situation outside. She found that Yang Jianhua had arrived at the hotel and seemed to have found that Lin Feng and the others had disappeared. Jing was so angry that he froze the whole building from the first floor to the 6th floor. Lin Qiao opened her eyes and said, "It's very cold outside." Everyone looked at her blankly and didn't know what she meant. It was a bit cold at night. After the apocalypse, the night wind was bone-chilling, so it was normal to be cold. They were used to it. Lin Qiao sensed what the Lin family was thinking and shrugged. "I mean, young Jianhua has frozen part of the building. But he seems to have found the solar energy and is going to dismantle it." Hearing the solar energy, Lin Feng and the others suddenly slapped their thighs and said, "Oh, no. The solar energy is going to be taken by that scum." Mrs. Lin looked at Lin Qiao and said, We can't let him take the solar energy away. Miss Liu, can't you think of a way to get the solar energy in first?" Lin Qiao shook her head and said, "The solar energy is still on the roof and hasn't been dismantled. I can't take those things that are connected to the ground. Unless we dismantle them and the building." At this time, Lin House suddenly said, "Why don't you wait for them to dismantle it? Why don't you just steal it again?" Hearing this, the others were all stunned. Then they all looked at Lin Qiao in surprise. Lin Qiao gave Lin Hao a thumbs up and said, "Smart. I didn't think of that." Qing Wangxue had been looking around for a while and finally couldn't help asking, "By the way, why didn't I see you bring Junjun and Tong Tong in? Where did you put them?" Lin Qiao looked at her and then turned around and pointed to the small space behind her. Lin Xiaolu, who had been sitting there bored, immediately shook Qing Wangshue's thigh and asked, "Mom, can I go and play with Tong Tong?" She was bored. Well, listening to these people, she seemed to be sleeping. But her mom wouldn't let her sleep. Qing Wangxue looked at her and then looked up at Lin Qiao. Lin Qiao nodded. Go ahead." It didn't matter. If he was tired, he could let the child sleep over there. There's a bed over there. After her space increased, the small space moved by itself and ran to the side. At that time, the bed inside was not moved, but was exposed in its original position. After that, Junjun moved the bed in, so Lin Qiao sent her in. All of them sent her directly into the small space. Qing Wangxue nodded, stood up, and brought Lin Xiaolu to the mini space. Lin Qiao looked at the crowd and said, "I'll go out and check out the situation first." Then, the figure flashed and disappeared. Li Sheng asked Lin Feng, "Is she really a zombie? What rank is it?" His intelligence had already reached such a high level, and he could even speak. Could she be the zombie king? Lin Feng shook his head. "Actually, we don't know her level, but she does have a zombie king with her." Feng Mingyu and the rest opened their eyes wide and looked around. Is there really a zombie king here? Where is it? This is a zombie king, an existence that many people can't see. Feng Mingyu, Li Sheng and the others were curious to see what this zombie king looked like. Lin Feng smiled and shook his head. "No need to look, she's not here. She went out these 2 days. Otherwise, would young Jianhua dare to approach us so arrogantly? He would have to think twice before approaching." Hearing that the zombie king wasn't here, Li Sheng and the others were a little disappointed. Feng Mingyu asked, "What does a level 6 zombie look like? Does she have 3 heads and 6 arms or something? Is she powerful?" Mrs. Lin smiled and said, "Well, she doesn't have 3 heads and 6 arms, but she's powerful." Xiao Yunlong couldn't help but say, "Wait a minute, how can Lingling awaken her special ability? There should be no energy source in her body, right?" Chapter 260. Speaking of the energy source, Wu Qingyue's expression froze for a moment, then he looked at his daughter. There was indeed a strange energy in his daughter's body, and he felt it on the way back. The energy in Lingling's body seemed to have begun to awaken, giving him a feeling that it was getting stronger and stronger. Could it be that it was this energy that caused Lingling to awaken in advance? No, Yunlong. Don't you feel that the inexplicable energy in Lingling's body is getting stronger and stronger? Xiao Yunlong came over, took Lingling's hand, closed his eyes and carefully felt it. Hey, it's true. At this time the doctor frowned and said, although Miss Lingling's performance seems like she is about to awaken her ability, Miss Lingling is only 5 years old. It is not a good thing for her to awaken her ability at this time. Being reminded by the doctor, Wu Qingyue's face immediately sank. His heart suddenly felt like it was poured with a basin of cold water. That's right, when the ability awakens. Humans currently cannot find any way to alleviate it, they can only rely on their own willpower to endure it. So the younger the person, the lower the willpower. Therefore, when many young people awaken their ability, the failure rate is also relatively high. Only some people with a very determined mind can successfully awaken their ability. Wu Qingyue looked at the doctor with a very anxious expression and said, Doctor, is there any way to suppress Lingling's awakening? If Lingling awakens now, she will not be able to endure it. The doctor frowned and shook his head. He said helplessly, we currently have no effective way to suppress the awakening of the ability, and the main source of awakening the ability is a small amount of zombie virus that slowly evolves into energy that can be absorbed by the human body. When this energy accumulates to a certain level, it will explode, and then we will see the awakening of the ability. I just want to ask, leader, when you brought Miss Lingling out this time, did you encounter any special circumstances? Wu Qingyue and Xiao Yunlong glanced at each other. Lingling was taken away by a zombie king, and was later rescued by others. What happened, we are not very clear. The doctor pushed up his glasses and looked at the data displayed on the instrument next to him. He thoughtfully lowered his eyebrows and said, last month Miss Lingling's physical examination data was very normal. It is reasonable to say that there should not be any abnormal changes within this year. Therefore, Miss Lingling's awakening must have been caused by something you encountered on this trip. Xiao Yunlong said eagerly, oh, what should we do now? You have to think of a way to stop the child's condition. Lingling was about to enter a coma. What would they do then? Lingling is so young, she won't be able to make it. The doctor looked up at Xiao Yunlong, then at Wu Qingyue, and then sighed, alas, there is nothing we can do to stop this situation. I'm so sorry. Doctor. Xiao Yunlong anxiously glared at the doctor and wanted to ask for help. At this time, Wu Qingyue stopped him. Wu Qingyue stared at the doctor and said, Doctor, is there really no way? We'll do anything you want us to do. The doctor was also a little anxious and said, no, I really can't do anything. Currently, the research on suppressing the zombie virus hasn't yielded any results, so we're also helpless in the awakening process of the zombie virus. Wu Qingyue stared at the doctor, and his expression became darker and darker. He actually understood that the current medical research on the zombie virus really did not have any effective development. So no matter if it was the process of turning into a zombie after being bitten by a zombie, there was no way to solve the awakening of the ability. But he couldn't just give up his daughter. Doctor, think about it. Is there really no way? As long as we can suppress the awakening process of Lingling, isn't her life not in danger? Xiao Yunlong anxiously paced around and said to the doctor. The doctor could only helplessly shake his head, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, we really can't do anything. Wu Qingyue opened his mouth and wanted to say something. At this time, Wu Yueling jumped out of bed and pulled Wu Qingyue's trousers. Wu Qingyue looked down at Wu Yueling, then squatted down and held her in his arms. Lingling, don't be afraid, Dad won't let anything happen to you. After coming out of the doctor's office, Wu Qingyue held Lingling and Xiao Yunlong and walked downstairs to the hospital. When he reached the hall, he saw several people coming in from outside the door. Hey, that's Leader Wu. He's back. Yan Fangyu, who accompanied Yuan Tianqing and the others to the hospital, was surprised to see Wu Qingyue and the others coming out. She greeted them with a faint smile. "Oh, isn't this Leader Wu and our little princess? When did you come back? Why are you here? Is there something wrong with your body?" Looking at the beautiful woman's kind smile, Wu Qingyue was in a low mood. But there was still a faint smile on his face. "Hello, Deputy Leader Yan." Yan Fangyu looked at him, then turned around and pointed to Yuan Tianqing and the others behind her. "Oh, just in time. Let me introduce, this is Mr. Yuan Tianqing, the deputy leader who came from Netherworld King's base." Then she pointed to Wu Qingyue and said to Yuan Tianqing, who walked to her side, "This is the Purple Thunder leader you were looking for before." Yuan Tianqing stretched out his hand to Wu Qingyue. "Hello, I finally see the real person." Wu Qingyue let Xiao Yunlong hold Wu Yueling, then shook hands with Yuan Tianqing. "Hello." Yuan Tianqing looked at him, then looked at Xiao Yunlong and Wu Yueling next to him. Suddenly he said, "This is the little princess, she is very cute. But your expressions don't look very good, what's wrong?" Yan Fangyu also nodded at this time and said with concern, "Yes, from the moment we met, you two looked very down. Did you lose a lot this time?" Yuan Tianqing looked at Wu Yueling and said, "It seems that the little princess's body is not very good, her face seems to be very red. Does she have a cold or a fever?" Wu Qingyue looked at his daughter and quickly reached out to touch his daughter's face, only to find that it was already very hot. Her face was a little red from the fever, and her originally bright expression was a little blurred. He let out a long sigh, then said, "Lingling, she is going to awaken. We can't suppress her situation now, I don't know what to do." Yan Fangyu's beautiful eyes widened in surprise, and her mouth opened slightly. "What? It can't be, this child is so young, how can it be?" Wu Qingyue's eyes dimmed. Yuan Tianqing suddenly said at this time, "How can such a young child awaken? Did you guys meet something outside?" After thinking about it, he suddenly pulled Xiao Yunlong to a corner where there was no one. "You guys come over here." After standing in a place where there was no one, he turned his head to Yuanqing, who had been invisible behind him, and said, "Yuanqing, give the water in the bottle to the child to drink, see if it is useful." Chapter 261. Hearing Yuan Tianqing's words, everyone looked at him in astonishment. At the same time, they were curious about what kind of water he was talking about. Yuanqing immediately stepped forward and took out a stainless steel thermos bottle from his bag. He unscrewed the lid and filled it with water before passing it to Yuan Tianqing. Yuan Tianqing took the water and said to Wu Qingyue, "This water of mine has a special effect. Let the child drink it and see if it can suppress it. Awakening an ability is not a trivial matter, but I can't guarantee that this water will not have an effect on the awakening." Wu Qingyue took the water and looked at Yuan Tianqing in surprise. Then, he looked at Yan Fangyu and asked Yuan Tianqing, "Deputy Leader Yuan, can your water really suppress the awakening of supernatural abilities?" This was someone else's good intention, so he couldn't just reject them in person. However, today was the first time he met the other party, even though he believed that the other party had no reason to harm his daughter. However, he still had to be careful. However, he still knew Yuan Tianqing's name, even though he had never seen him in person. However, he had heard that he was not a bad person. Yuan Tianqing shook his head and said, "I can't guarantee that, and to be honest, I don't know much about the effects of this water. However, it was true that drinking it was beneficial to the human body. It all depends on whether you believe me or not." Wu Qingyue stared into his eyes. After thinking for a while, he put the water in his mouth and took a sip. He felt a cool sensation on the tip of his tongue. Without any hesitation, he brought the water to Wu Yueling's mouth. "Lingling, Lingling. Here, drink some water first. Come on, open your mouth." It didn't matter if he could believe it or not, as long as there was a bit of hope. He had to give it a try. He knew that the other party wouldn't harm them, because doing so would not do them any good. Wu Yueling's expression was a little confused. She looked back at her father blankly. After hearing his words, she obediently opened her mouth and waited for Wu Qingyue to let her drink the water. Xiao Yunlong kept touching the child's forehead and little hand. The temperature is getting higher and higher, what should we do? Wu Qingyue passed the lid back to Yuan Tianqing after the child finished drinking. Then he touched the child's forehead. The more he touched it, the more his heart sank. Yuan Tianqing took the lid and poured another cup for Du Yuanqing. Then he handed it to Wu Qingyue and said, "Come. Let her have another drink. She needs to drink 3 cups for it to be effective. But the child is still young, so he can drink 3 cups with this lid." Wu Qingyue looked at him, then took the water and gave it to the child to drink without saying anything. At this moment, a voice sounded from the side, "Hey, Deputy Leader. Why are you standing here?" Leader Wu and Deputy Leader Xiao of Xiao Yunlong, Leader Wu and Xiao, is back. Xiao Tianqing Xiao and leader is Xiao. Everyone turned their heads and saw Lin Yu standing there with a bag of medicine in his hand, looking at them in surprise. Time Xingyang Xiao Yu, Xiao about time about. As soon as I came in, I saw Leader Wu and the others. It just so happened that I had something to discuss with them. Lin Yu walked to Du Yuanqing's side and stared blankly at Wu Qingyue as he handed the lid back to Du Yuanqing. Then, he watched as Du Yuanqing filled the 3rd cup and handed it back. Yu, of yen was about time from. Yen, time, yen time. Yuan Tianqing smiled faintly at her and said, "Sort of." Wu Qingyue handed the 3rd glass of water to the child dubiously before returning the bottle cap to Du Yuanqing. "Thank you. If Lingling's condition improves, is there anything I can do to help? You can look for me anytime." Lin Yu didn't know what was going on and just stared blankly. Yuan Tianqing smiled and said, "Of course, if it's you, Chief Wu. It would definitely help us a lot. However, I have a favor to ask Leader Wu and the 2 vice leaders for help. I hope that no one else knows about the effects of this water." Yan Fangyu smiled and said, "Of course, don't worry." Wu Qingyue also nodded, but his attention was focused on his daughter. Yuan Tianqing looked at him and said, "You should take the child back to rest first. We should also leave. Maybe the effect of the water isn't that fast, so you don't have to worry too much." Wu Qingyue smiled at him and nodded. "I'm sorry I didn't receive you well today. I'll be free in 2 days. I'll treat you to another meal." Yuan Tianqing shook his head carelessly and said, "Alas, don't be so polite with me. I also want to help this child." The 2 sides said goodbye, and then Yuan Tianqing and Yan Fangyu took Lin Yu and Du Yuanqing back to their residences. After Yan Fangyu left, Lin Yu asked Du Yuanqing, "What kind of water did our deputy leader give the little princess to drink?" Du Yuanqing looked at the medicine he had exchanged and suddenly said to Yuan Tianqing, "Boss, in fact, we don't need these medicines. It's really a waste to exchange food for them. With Lu Tianyu's spatial water, they really didn't need these ordinary medicines." Yuan Tianqing said, "This is just for show, so that people know that we have enough food. Maybe this will attract some people to follow us." Du Yuanqing blinked and said blankly, "Oh." But he still couldn't figure it out. Why did they have to let others know that they had food? What if someone had bad intentions and wanted to rob them? However, with the boss around, as long as it wasn't a level 6 or 7 expert, even if they came, it would be useless. Yuan Tianqing said to Lin Yu, "You've also drunk the water I gave the little princess today. Didn't you feel that your body is recovering too fast? This is our secret weapon. Be careful not to tell anyone. Lin Yu said, then why did you let Wu Qingyue and the two deputy leaders know? Yuan Tianqing said with a smile, first, I also want to know if this water can be effective in awakening. Second, if we help him this time, it'll be equivalent to doing him a big favor. If we cooperate in the future, the grudge between us will disappear. As for Miss Yen, she's not a bad person, so it doesn't matter if she knows. Du Yuanqing suddenly smiled and said to him, Boss, have you taken a fancy to the goddess of the entire base? Be careful not to be destroyed. Yuan Tianqing glanced at him indifferently. What nonsense are you talking about? I have someone in my heart, but she's so warm to me, I can't always be cold to her. Besides, she's helped us a lot. Be gentle to women, you know. Serves you right for evolving into a dog. Du Yuanqing looked at him speechlessly. You make it sound like you're not a dog, Yuan Tianqing. Lin Yu looked at the two of them and said, our deputy leader is so handsome and nice. It's normal for a goddess to like him. And the deputy leader's luck with women has always been very strong. Du Yuanqing touched his chin. Well, that's right. Why didn't I remember that the deputy leader used to be liked by a lot of women, but I don't understand who you like. If you like someone, then say it out loud. Chapter 262. It's okay, said Yuan Tianqing, except for our own people. They don't know that the water belongs to Lu Tianyu. If they know that Lu Tianyu has become a zombie who can save people, they'll be very happy. It'll be fun. While speaking, he gave a meaningful smile. Du Yuanqing popped his eyes and looked at him. That's not very nice of you. You'll bring her trouble, won't you? Yuan Tianqing glanced at him and said carelessly, don't be silly. Don't you know what kind of zombie she is? I don't think even a level 7 superpowered man can catch her. Do you think she's as silly as you? She's smart. Besides, haven't you seen what kind of skills she has? I've been hearing you guys talk about Lu Tianyu, zombies, space. Are you talking about the same person I'm thinking about? She's not the famous Lu Tianyu in this base, is she? Du Yuanqing and Yuan Tianqing looked at him and nodded together. No way. Lin Yu said with disbelief, has she really become a zombie? I heard that she was knocked out and thrown into a zombie crowd. Didn't she get torn into pieces? Yuan Tianqing shook his head and said, no, she's fine. Du Yuanqing joined the conversation, except for the fact that she has become a zombie, you won't think of Lu Tianyu, who everyone despises. Now, she has become a good zombie who likes to do good deeds. Lin Yu didn't know what to say. It was getting more and more ridiculous. Turning into a zombie was one thing. What was doing good deeds? Her body was torn apart when she died, so no one would be able to recognize her now. Besides, did that water have anything to do with Lu Tianyu? Based on their conversation, it seemed that only Lu Tianyu had that water. But, can the water really help with the awakening? What if it doesn't help the little princess? Will Wu Qingyue have a problem with us? What can he possibly say about that? Said Yuan Tianqing. I'm helping him out of kindness. It doesn't matter if the water can help him or not. But, I'm sure that it won't hurt his little princess. Besides, I've already said this in advance. I can't guarantee that it'll be effective. Du Yuanqing said, besides, Wu Qingyue doesn't look like a narrow-minded, unreasonable person in the base. I'm sure he won't blame us. Yuan Tianqing nodded at him. On the other side, Wu Qingyue carried Ling Ling back to the house and put her in the bedroom. So, he asked Xiao Yunlong to find another doctor, who was a weirdo in the base. He didn't really listen to the words of others. He would treat when he wanted to, and when he didn't want to. It was useless to force him. However, he did respect Wu Qingyue a lot. As long as it was Wu Qingyue's people, he wouldn't hesitate to kill them. He would agree no matter what. This doctor was called Liang Dashu. He was not originally a doctor. He was just an ordinary bookstore owner. He liked to read a lot of books and read all kinds of books. But he especially likes novels, comics, and web novels. Of course, he also read books on industry jargon. However, they only looked at it half-heartedly. Only when they encountered a problem that interested them would they delve deeper into it. He wasn't a medical major, and the only reason he was called a doctor was because of his awakened superpower. He was a healer. For external injuries and some minor ailments, it could be easily healed with the use of his superpower. He could only cure the serious diseases and incurable diseases, because his superpower wasn't at a high level. Therefore, even if he could cure those diseases, he could only suppress them and delay them for a while. However, his current job wasn't a bookstore owner or a doctor. Instead, he was a researcher in the Zombie Virus Research Institute. He had read a lot of books. After the apocalypse, he had put forward some hypotheses about the formation of the zombie virus based on the books he read. Some of his findings were confirmed, and under Wu Qingyue's recommendation, he was sent to the Zombie Virus Research Institute as a researcher. However, as he had awakened his superpower, he had successfully learned some medical knowledge. In a small research room which was filled with all kinds of complicated instruments, a bearded man with long hair that reached his neck was studying all kinds of data. At that moment, someone knocked on the door twice, but the man didn't respond to the knock. However, the person outside the door didn't seem to wait for his response. She knocked on the door, then pushed the door open and walked in. After that, a young woman with a cold face walked in and said, "Uncle Liang, Chief Wu sent someone to invite you to his place." Liang Dashu didn't take his eyes off the data, but still responded, "Is Chief back? Something must be wrong with her body. She wants me to go to her place." "Alright, I get it. Go and get the first aid kit ready. I'll be done in a few minutes." The woman nodded expressionlessly, then turned and left. In Wu Qingyue's small building, Xiao Yunlong touched the little one's forehead. She looked very sleepy, but surprisingly, she hadn't passed out yet. After touching the little one's forehead, he touched his own as well. With hesitation, he said to Wu Qingyue, "Has Ling Ling's fever stopped?" "I don't think it's rising anymore. Her temperature was about the same as it was 3 minutes ago." Wu Qingyue was looking at the thermometer as he said with a sullen face, "Yeah, 58 degrees just now. Now, 57. 8 degrees. I think it's gone down a little." The fever had gone down a little, but that was still a scary number. Xiao Yunlong popped his eyes and said, "What? 58 degrees? So high." He hurriedly turned to Ling Ling and asked her, "Ling Ling, do you still recognize your godfather? Can you please blink your eyes if you do?" However, Ling Ling only looked at him confusedly, without making any reaction. Wu Qingyue put the thermometer aside, then walked to the bed and sat down. He bent over and said to Ling Ling, "Ling Ling, can you see your godfather?" Ling Ling looked at Xiao Yunlong, then slowly moved her eyes to Wu Qingyue's face with confusion. After that, she nodded slightly. Wu Qingyue asked, "Do you have strength? Do you feel any discomfort?" asked Wu Qingyue. Ling Ling shook her head slightly, then continued shaking her head. She seemed to be very weak. After that, Wu Qingyue said to Xiao Yunlong, "Ling Ling's mind is clear, but I think she has no strength." "It's been an hour since we came back," said Xiao Yunlong. "Ling Ling's fever hasn't gone down yet. However, she didn't fall into a coma. Is that a good thing? Besides, her body temperature is too high. Something bad is going to happen." Wu Qingyue said, "I've rubbed her wounds with alcohol for a few times. Now, I don't think her temperature will go up. Now, let's wait for Dr. Liang to come and check on her. Dr. Liang has read a lot of books, said Xiao Yunlong, and now, he's passionate about virus research. I wonder if he has any way to help Ling Ling. A trace of hope flashed across Wu Qingyue's eyes as he said, I don't know. I hope he can figure out a way. Chapter 263. Not long after, the guard announced that Dr. Liang had arrived. Wu Qingyue hurriedly walked out of the bedroom and saw two people carrying medical boxes walking in from the door downstairs. Dr. Liang, Wu Qingyue greeted as he walked down the stairs. Leader, may I ask if you need me to treat someone? Liang Dashu's appearance at this time was a little tidier than when he was in the research room, but he only casually tied his hair up at the back of his neck. The big beard on his face gave people a sense of sloppiness no matter how you looked at it, even if he was clean. Dr. Liang, Miss Mo Li. Please take a look at Ling Ling's bedroom. Wu Qingyue looked at them and said. What's wrong with the little princess? Liang Dashu and his assistant Mo Li asked him in surprise when they heard that he wanted to take a look at Ling Ling's bedroom. Ling Ling is awakening her ability, Wu Qingyue said with a gloomy expression. What? Quick, bring me up to take a look. Hearing that it was awakening her ability, both of them were shocked. Liang Dashu hurriedly ran up the stairs. Once in the room, Liang Dashu first checked Ling Ling's temperature, then looked at her pupils and tongue. Then, he gently pressed his hand on Ling Ling's forehead. If it was the usual Ling Ling who saw strangers, she would have already shrunk to the side, let alone let others touch her. But today, she just looked at this and that with a blank expression. Her gaze would only stay on Wu Qingyue for a long time, but she did not react to Liang Dashu's actions at all. After Liang Dashu pressed his hand on Ling Ling's forehead, he was scalded by the temperature of her forehead. But he did not let go and continued to press. Then, a strange energy came out of his palm and slowly spread to Ling Ling's forehead. At this time, the other three people stood quietly at the side, staring straight at him. After a whole 15 minutes, Liang Dashu's expression became more and more serious. Seeing his expression, the others already understood what he meant. Wu Qingyue's legs suddenly went soft and he took a step back. He turned around and slowly walked to the sofa to sit down. Then, he supported his drooping forehead with one hand, so that no one could see his expression. He did not know why, in the past 2 months. His Ling Ling always encountered these kinds of bad things. Previously, he was abducted by that woman, Lu Tianyu, and he had no idea where he was thrown to. It wasn't easy to find him. A few days ago, he was captured by the Zombie King and almost lost his life. Now that he was back, he suddenly had to awaken his special ability. If it was the Lord who had awakened his special ability, he would not be so worried. However, Ling Ling was only a 5-year-old child. After another 10 minutes, Liang Dashu unwillingly let go of his hand. He shook his head helplessly at Xiao Yunlong and Mo Li. I can't help it. My ability doesn't have any effect on the energy in her body. Liang Dashu said dejectedly, but soon he looked at Wu Qingyue and said, but it's strange. The child's body temperature was already very high. The child should have been unconscious by now. Why was she still awake? Not really awake. He should be half awake. As he said this, he bent down and looked at Ling Ling's eyes carefully. Wu Qingyue raised his head abruptly. His eyes were bloodshot. He asked, Dr. Liang, what do you mean? Liang Dashu straightened his back and crossed his hands in front of his chest. After thinking for a moment, he said, I feel that Ling Ling's current situation seems to be stuck by something. She seems to have been pressed the pause button, and the energy in her body has become temporarily trapped. She can't shrink back, and she can't release it. In short, the progress of her awakening has been forcibly suppressed. As soon as he said this, the other three people widened their eyes in disbelief. Doctor Liang, is what you said true? Liang Dashu nodded and said, yes. Although I'm not sure how long this situation will last, it is currently in this situation. Logically speaking, normal people will not have this situation. Have you encountered anything strange related to the child? Or what did Lingling encounter? Wu Qingyue and Xiao Yunlong looked at each other and suddenly said, Lingling drank some water. As soon as he finished speaking, Liang Dashu immediately looked at him. He asked, what water? Where did she drink it? Where did the water come from? Also, how can you give the child anything to drink? What if it has the opposite effect? Wu Qingyue said, the other party said it was good for the child, and from his point of view, there is no reason to harm Lingling. And I drank a little at the time and felt that there was nothing wrong with it, so I gave it to Lingling. Xiao Yunlong suddenly reached out his hand. Wait a minute, is Lingling's situation good or bad now? Dr. Liang, I don't quite understand what you are saying. Just tell me, is Lingling in danger now? Liang Dashu said, didn't I say? Lingling's current situation is that the awakening energy is temporarily suppressed for some unknown reason. Lingling's current situation is temporarily not dangerous, but I don't know how long this situation will last. She has not passed the critical period and needs to continue to be observed. Do you understand? Xiao Yunlong nodded, is that so? Did that mean that Yuan Tianqing's water was effective? Then if we find him to continue to give this kind of water to Lingling, will the situation improve? With that, he suddenly turned and walked out. I'm going to find them now. Wu Qingyue just glanced at Xiao Yunlong and did not stop him. He turned to look at Lingling. If it was really that Yuan Tianqing who helped a lot, then he could only continue to trouble him. A thought flashed through Liang Dashu's mind and he suddenly said, wait, I'm going too. With that, he immediately turned and chased after Xiao Yunlong. Mo Li was left with a wooden expression in the room, looking at Wu Qingyue and Lingling. Then she walked to the bedside and bent down to touch Lingling's forehead, then frowned slightly. Her fever has reached this degree, but she is only in a semi-conscious state. It's amazing. Wu Qingyue had taken off Wu Yueling's clothes because her temperature was too high. He only took a thin sheet to cover her, but her hands and feet were exposed. Mo Li reached out and pressed Lingling's forehead like Liang Dashu just now, sensing for a few seconds. Then she let go. Lingling's spirit is very stable, there are no abnormal changes, so there will not be a mental breakdown for the time being. Amazing, what kind of water is that? She looked at Wu Qingyue. Although there was no expression on his face, there was some curiosity in his eyes. Wu Qingyue stood up and walked to the bedside, gently stroking Lingling's long hair with his hand. Chapter 264. Mo Li looked at him and said, Leader, your heart is really big. Someone gave you an unknown liquid and you still dared to give it to a child. Have you thought about the consequences? Wu Qingyue sighed and said, what else can I do? Now, everyone's ability awakening was like taking a trip to the gates of hell in order to bring Lingling back alive. Even if it's poison, I have to treat it as an antidote. What if it really works? Look, isn't this a good result? Mo Li nodded, that's true. Having hope is better than knowing that there's no hope and not being able to do anything. Yuan Tianqing and Du Yuanqing were looking at the information of the applicants in their room. Many of them were attracted by the large amount of food Yuan Tianqing had given them. But when they heard that they were going to Zombie City, they all gave up. After all, Zombie City was a forbidden area. Ordinary people would be lucky if they could come back alive. Not to mention rank 3 and rank 4 metahumans, they would also be doomed. So if 100 came, 99 would return. The remaining 2 were those who were hungry to the point of risking their lives, or those who had no other choice. Although they had repeatedly emphasized that they would not be attacked by zombies, they did not guarantee their safety. So their mission was put up, and only 3 people decided to go with them. This is a rank 4 Earth-type ability. It's from the same source as you, boss. I have high hopes for him. Oh, him. I've sent people to investigate. Although he has a rank 4 ability, he's a little stupid. Every time he goes out on a mission, he would come back with injuries. But the amount of food he gets is the least, and he has a big appetite. Every time he comes back, the food he gets doesn't last more than 3 days. Others eat a week's worth of food, but he finishes it in 2 days. No way. This other people save as much as they can, why does he still eat so much? That's why I said he's a little stupid and doesn't know how to save. Also, he's quite famous now. Because he's not smart enough, everyone feels that he will be a burden on missions, so many teams are not willing to accept him. That's true, he will indeed be a burden to others. After all, there are too many dangerous factors in the outside world. Then should we take him in? He won't cause any trouble for us, right? Yuan Tianqing sighed and said, "Sigh, there are too few of us taking the vanguard." He could only make do with it. Although this person was a little silly, he was a little silly. We just need to pay more attention to him in the future. Yuanqing nodded. It couldn't be helped. They were short on manpower now. At this moment, Lu Junjie suddenly knocked on the door and came in to report, "Boss, Deputy Leader Xiao is here." Yuan Tianqing froze for a moment and turned to look at the door. Then he quickly said, "Deputy Leader Xiao." "Oh, invite him in." Lu Junjie immediately pushed the door open and gestured to the people outside. "Please come in." Xiao Yunlong came in with a bearded man. Yuan Tianqing pointed at the sofa in the room and said politely, "Please have a seat." "Did something happen to Miss Lingling? What do you think?" Xiao Yunlong pointed to Liang Dashu behind him and said, "This is Dr. Liang from our base. We came for your water." With that, he sat on the sofa. Lu Junjie consciously helped close the door after the 2 people went in. Hearing Xiao Yunlong's words, Yuan Tianqing nodded to Dr. Liang, "Hello, Dr. Liang." Liang Dashu nodded to him at the same time, "Hello." Xiao Yunlong pointed to Yuan Tianqing and said to Liang Dashu, "This is Deputy Leader Yuan who came from Netherworld King's base." Liang Dashu said, "Mr. Yuan, I wonder if you can let me see the water you brought." Hearing Liang Dashu's question, Yuan Tianqing's face became slightly pale. He looked at Xiao Yunlong. He had said before that this water couldn't be known by others, but he didn't expect Dr. Liang to come now. Xiao Yunlong knew what he meant when he saw his face and quickly explained, "Don't worry. Dr. Liang is different from other doctors. He won't tell anyone about this. And his personality is more eccentric and he doesn't interact much with others. So you really don't have to worry too much." Liang Dashu also understood what they meant, nodded and promised Yuan Tianqing, "I promise, this matter will not be known to a third person except me and my assistant." Xiao Yunlong said, "Because Lingling's current situation is a bit special, Dr. Liang, and we all judge that the reason may be because of the water you gave Lingling to drink. So we want to talk to you again." Yuan Tianqing looked at Liang Dashu with a serious expression, and then asked Xiao Yunlong, "What's the situation with Miss Lingling?" Xiao Yunlong glanced at Liang Dashu. Liang Dashu said, "Lingling's current situation is a bit special. Her awakening energy has only awakened halfway, but it seems to be suppressed by something. Now it has stopped there, the fever has not subsided, but she has not completely fallen into a coma. And I'm not sure if this situation is temporary or will continue to be like this. So, will it continue to awaken or will it stop awakening? I don't know yet." Yuan Tianqing opened his eyes slightly in surprise, glancing at Yuanqing behind him. Then he turned back to Xiao Yunlong and Liang Dashu and said, suppressed. Really? The two nodded, and Liang Dashu said, because this is the first time this has happened, we don't know what will happen next. So I want to see if there is any special element in that potion, or what caused Lingling's situation to be suppressed. Yuan Tianqing made a gesture to Du Yuanqing, asking, how long has Miss Lingling's condition been? When did she start to notice the change? Du Yuanqing knowingly poured a cup of water from Lin Qiao's space, and then placed it on the coffee table in front of Liang Dashu and Liang Dashu. Liang Dashu eagerly took the water and looked at it, saying, it was like that when I went, but Lingling's eyes are still open, but her consciousness is a bit fuzzy. Xiao Yunlong also looked curiously at the cup of water in Liang Dashu's hand. Seeing that it was transparent white water, and there was nothing unusual, he said, half an hour ago, Lingling's temperature suddenly stopped at 58 degrees, and then it didn't rise. Before Dr. Liang came, Lingling's temperature had dropped a little. Yuan Tianqing crossed his hands in front of his chest, saying thoughtfully, 58 degrees is the normal temperature at the time of awakening, and the highest temperature is 70 degrees. But most normal people are already in a coma at this temperature, but Miss Lingling has not fainted. It's really amazing. Xiao Yunlong said, yes, so we came to you to let Lingling continue to drink this water, to see if it can completely suppress the situation. Yuan Tianqing shook his head, no, drinking too much of this water is useless. Its effect is in the back, and drinking too much can't increase its effect. It has a limit. Chapter 265. Liang Dashu stared at the water in the cup for a long time, then smelled it and took a sip. Then he turned to Yuan Tianqing and said, there is a strange energy in this water. I feel that this energy and my ability seem to be of the same origin and have a healing effect. But the energy in this water seems to be different from my ability, there is something more. But Mr. Yuan is right, there is a limit to the energy in this water. He sighed and put the glass of water on the table. He continued, the energy in this water actually depends on the person who drinks it and how much the body can absorb. If the absorption reaches a saturation level, it will not be absorbed anymore. And the other excess energy will disappear or be discharged from the body. Xiao Yunlong looked at him and then slowly showed a disappointed expression. Yuan Tianqing nodded and said, yes. However, the effect of the water is slowly taking effect now. We still have to see the situation in the future. Can I go to Leader Wu's house to see? Xiao Yunlong immediately nodded, of course. Wu Qingyue watched Lingling by the bed. Mo Li took out Lingling's thermometer and looked at it, then said, it has gone down again, now 57 degrees. Wu Qingyue touched Lingling's forehead with his hand, feeling the hot temperature under his hand, but Lingling's consciousness is not clear. Mo Li's indifferent face was expressionless as she said, Leader, the temperature has gone down a little, as long as it doesn't continue to rise again. It may get better, even if she is in a semi-conscious state. It's better than continuing to awaken. You should take it easy, maybe Dr. Liang can think of a way to help Lingling. Wu Qingyue knew that she was comforting him and understood that Lingling's current situation was already very good. If it was someone else, after such a long time, they would have closed their eyes and might not be able to wake up again. But now he was very afraid that Lingling's current situation would break at any time. Then if she continued to awaken her ability, everything would really be over. Wu Qingyue sat on the chair beside the bed, one hand holding Lingling's small hand, the other hand stroking her bangs on her forehead. Lingling, look at Dad. Are you hungry? Do you want to eat? He talked to Lingling, hoping to wake her up with his voice. The little guy just blankly looked at him without shaking his head or nodding his head. Her big eyes stared blankly at the ceiling, but she wasn't focused. Wu Qingyue turned his head and suddenly saw the grass dragonfly on the bedside table. His expression froze for a moment before he reached out and took the grass dragonfly. Lingling, look. This is your favorite dragonfly. If you don't get up, Daddy will hide it. He waved the grass dragonfly in front of Lingling and joked. He originally thought that Lingling wouldn't have any reaction, but he saw Lingling's eyes move. Then, it moved down from the ceiling and stared at the dragonfly in his hand. Wu Qingyue was taken aback by her reaction. Then, he looked at her in surprise. Lingling. Do you recognize this? Lingling stared blankly at the grass dragonfly in Wu Qingyue's hand and didn't respond. Wu Qingyue tried to move the grass dragonfly, and sure enough, Lingling's eyes followed the movement of the grass dragonfly. He said to her, Lingling, do you want this? If you want it, nod to Daddy and Daddy will give it to you, okay? Wu Qingyue wanted to know what he said. Would Lingling be able to hear it? Would her brain be able to accept it? However, Lingling didn't nod as he wished. She still stared at the dragonfly in his hand. Emily was surprised, although she didn't show it on her face. But she asked, this grass dragonfly must be very important to Miss Lingling, otherwise she wouldn't be able to recognize it even though her consciousness is blurred. Wu Qingyue put the dragonfly in Lingling's hand. She likes it very much, always treating it as her treasure. Not long after, Xiao Yunlong came back with Yuan Tianqing and Liang Dashu. How is it? Is Lingling's condition better? As soon as they entered the room, they immediately asked about Lingling's situation. Hello, Leader Wu, sorry to come uninvited. I hope you don't mind. Yuan Tianqing came in and greeted Wu Qingyue. Out of courtesy, Yuan Tianqing only brought Du Yuanqing in. The others waited outside the door. When Wu Qingyue saw him, he immediately stood up. It's okay, I haven't thanked you yet. The water you gave seems to have some effect on Lingling's condition, I still want to trouble you to help again. Yuan Tianqing said, can I also see Miss Lingling's condition? To be honest, I'm not very sure about the effect of the water, but now it seems to be really effective, that's great. Wu Qingyue said, yes, but Lingling's current condition may. Yuan Tianqing nodded. Then I'll have to bother you. Then he curiously came to the bedside and saw that Dr. Liang was examining Lingling's wrist and eyes. How is it? Dr. Liang looked at Lingling's hand that was tightly grasping the grass dragonfly and tried to move it away. He found that as long as he moved the grass dragonfly, Lingling's eyes would fluctuate. He took a step back and said, Lingling's body temperature is much lower than before we left, but she is still in a semi-conscious state. But she is very concerned about the thing in her hand. Where did you get it? Xiao Yunlong replied, oh, this is from someone else. Lingling really likes it, she usually holds it and won't let go. Dr. Liang thought for a moment and said, I can't see any changes in the child, but from the fact that the fever is slowly going down, it is developing in a good direction. The development was going in a good direction. The problem now was whether the child could wake up or not. But from the toy she cares about, she cares a lot, but this is only a subconscious reaction. Wu Qingyue listened to his words, but his expression did not relax. But at least it was not as low as before. Xiao Yunlong looked at Dr. Liang and said a little anxiously, that means. Do we still need to observe? Dr. Liang nodded. On the other side, in Lin Qiao's space. Lin Qiao was not in the space, although the others were sitting on the sofa, there were a few active people who couldn't sit still. Lin Wenwen just went to pick some strawberries, took them to the lake and washed them with the water in the bucket. Then she looked at the other side of the lake and saw 2 buckets. But Lin Wenwen didn't dare to go near those 2 buckets. Because she found that there were 2 zombies in the buckets. Alive. After washing the strawberries, she went back to the sofa and put the strawberries on the table in the middle of the sofa. This is a product of Miss Lu's space, eat it, there is no virus. As she spoke, she picked one up and ate it naturally. They had eaten this strawberry before, so now they didn't worry about it being infected. Chapter 266. Li Zheng and the others stared at the strawberries in surprise and didn't take action. Feng Mingyu, who had relaxed, noticed the two big buckets dozens of meters away. She pointed at them and asked curiously, "Hey, are there people sitting in those two buckets? Why do I see people sitting in them? What are they doing?" Lin Wenwen said, "Oh, those two aren't people, they're zombies. I advise you to stay away from them." Feng Mingyu. Zombie? There are other zombies in there. Lin Feng nodded and said, "Do you think there's only a bald female zombie? She's just the captain of the zombie squad." Li Zheng asked with a blank face, "Wait, captain. What's the zombie squad you're talking about?" Lin Feng smiled and said, "Oh, why do you think we only have these few people? Why can we live here peacefully? Because we have a few special allies." Li Zheng suddenly asked curiously, "Oh, right, how did you escape from Yang Jianhua's hands?" Lin Feng told them about the situation and said, "So we're staying here temporarily to wait for Yuan Tianqing and the others. We didn't expect Yang Jianhua to be so daring and come back. But he's also very cunning and watched us from afar. He wanted to ambush us when Qiu Lily wasn't here." Lin Chao saw Yang Jianhua send people to dismantle the solar system, photovoltaic modules, batteries, controller, inverter, etc. They were all put aside. Just as they were about to move them downstairs, Lin Chao made her move. "Be careful, don't damage the solar modules," Yang Jianhua warned loudly. Lin Chao went downstairs in advance and guarded the stairs. She waited for Yang Jianhua's people to come down slowly. When one came down, she directly collected the things. Then she knocked him out and dragged him to the side to throw him away. Then she continued to collect things and knock people out. Because there were more solar modules in this set, so Yang Jianhua arranged a dozen or so people to move them down. So when Lin Chao knocked out the third person, she was discovered. "Oh no, someone is stealing the solar module." Lin Chao heard someone shout and immediately sped up. She quickly flashed past those people. When she flashed past them, she would directly touch the solar module in the person's hand. Then, he quickly knocked on the man's head. When Yang Jianhua heard the commotion and realized that something was wrong, he ran down. He found the man lying on the stairs. The solar equipment that these people had been moving had disappeared. However, when he ran down and saw this scene, he suddenly remembered that there was still equipment on the roof and rushed up. It was empty again. At this moment, Lin Chao suddenly appeared at the edge of a corner building far away from him. He sneered at him and said, "This solar energy was originally ours, but thank you for helping to dismantle it." At this time, Yang Jianhua's face was as black as charcoal, and his handsome face became somewhat distorted. He gritted his teeth and said, "You're still here." Lin Chao shrugged and said lightly, "Why can't I be here? This is my territory to begin with. If you have the ability, then don't leave. Stay here. I'll be very welcome." She was not worried about how far Yang Jianhua could go, because she had noticed it. Among the people he brought, there wasn't anyone with the space element. So, the things had to be moved by manpower, and the car had been taken by her. So, Yang Jianhua could not go far even if he did not carry the solar energy. She continued, "Since you don't even have a space ability user with you, you're such a failure as a leader." Hearing Lin Chao's words, Yang Jianhua's face turned even darker. It was already late at night, and no one would notice his dark face. But at this time, the aura around him was too dark, and layers of oppressive aura spread out. Failure or not, it's not up to you to decide. Do you have the ability to fight me openly? What's the point of hiding? Hearing this, Lin Chao laughed. Sigh, I don't like hearing this. If I have the ability, then why the hell would I hide? It's true that I can't beat you, but I didn't provoke you first, you came to provoke me. If I could beat you, I would have crippled you long ago. Young Jianhua was speechless. That's right, he was the one who came to find trouble with these people first. So, he was not in the right. They're just some stray dogs. Sooner or later, I'll kill them all. I think you should keep them in the space. From the previous signs, young Jianhua could tell that Lin Chao was a space ability user. As for Lin Chao's shady business, he did not know that it was also her ability. He thought that it was just some poisonous gas that Lin Chao collected. Lin Chao's expression suddenly turned cold, and her pair of dark eyes stared quietly at young Jianhua. A strange light flashed in her eyes as she said, "You won't have that chance. You don't have the ability. And for everything you did to Lin Chao, sooner or later, you'll pay back with your life." Hearing her suddenly mention Lin Chao's name, young Jianhua was stunned for a moment. Then, the gloominess on his face suddenly disappeared, and he smiled proudly. "Oh, so you know Lin Chao. Don't tell me you want to take revenge for her. Right, before you take revenge, I think you should go and collect her corpse." An inexplicable light flashed in Lin Chao's eyes as she said, "So, you set her up to be trapped in the zombie city, and then pretended to save her, and then used the identity of a benefactor to get close to her. Is all this true?" Young Jianhua nodded. "Yes, don't the Lin family know this? Do you still need to confirm it with me?" "There's no need to confirm it, so what if I set it up? What can you do to me?" Lin Chao suddenly smiled, and the smile was a bit strange. "Because of what you said, I'll have to trouble you to live a little longer. Don't die too quickly, or I'll regret it." She decided that this young Jianhua must be killed after she recovered her memories. He had to wait until he regained those memories before killing him. Otherwise, it would be meaningless to kill him before he remembered anything about him. If she remembered it one day, she might think that killing him was too easy. According to her current assumption, he really did do those things to her. She also wouldn't let him die too easily. Young Jianhua didn't care and sneered. "You want me to die? That depends on who has the ability." Lin Chao said, "Even if I have the ability, I won't kill you." Young Jianhua didn't quite understand this sentence, and puzzledly said, "What do you mean? You'll be lenient towards me?" Lin Chao sneered. Hee, I just don't want you to die like this. You're thinking too much." After saying that, she didn't say anything more to him. She turned around and entered the space. Chapter 267. After entering the space, Lin Chao appeared next to the pile of solar equipment and saw that the others had gathered around. She saw that the others had gathered around and were studying how to install it. Lin Chao walked over and asked, "Does anyone know how to install it?" When the others heard her voice, they immediately turned around to look at her. Lin Feng shook his head, "No one on our side knows how to install it. Li Sheng and the rest of you don't seem to know how to either, right?" Then he looked at Li Sheng and the others. Li Sheng shook his head and said, "No, I think we should wait for the deputy leader to bring people back." Lin Chao suddenly stared at Li Sheng and the others and asked, "Why do I feel like I've seen you before? I think I've smelled you before." Then she stuck her nose out and moved closer to them. Seeing her sticking her nose out, Li Sheng and the others subconsciously took a few steps back. Feng Mingyu quickly waved her hand and said, "No. No. I've definitely never seen you before. Anyway, I've never seen you before." Looking at Lin Qiao's shiny bald head and the pair of frightening black eyes, Li Jing couldn't help but feel scared. He couldn't help but have goosebumps when he looked at her. Lin Qiao moved closer to him and said maliciously, "Why are you so afraid of me? Are you afraid that I'll eat you?" "Don't worry, I don't eat lazy grass." Feng Mingyu was a little scared when she saw her getting closer. But why did it feel like the other party was teasing him? You, stay away from me." Lin Qiao was amused as he retracted his body and carefully sized them up. She thoughtfully continued, "I really feel like I've seen you guys before. It's so strange." Li Zheng shook his head and chuckled, "I'm not sure. Anyway, I've never seen you before." Then he looked at Fei Chonglin, Lei Yao, and Huang Ming. Fei Chonglin and Lei Yao shook their heads at the same time, indicating that they had never seen her before. Huang Ming looked at Lin Qiao's face with some doubt, as if he was struggling with something. He said, "I think you look familiar too. Were you from Sea City Base before?" Lin Qiao looked at him. Because there was some distance between them, she couldn't sense what he was thinking. But from the look in his eyes, she seemed to have thought of something. She replied, "You mean before I became a zombie?" "Yes, indeed." Huang Ming looked at Lin Qiao's face and said, "I feel like I've seen you somewhere, but I can't remember. By the way, is it convenient for me to ask your name?" Lin Qiao looked at him and suddenly said meaningfully, "I think it's better if you don't know my real name." She knew that this Huang Ming wasn't a member of the Netherworld King's base. In other words, he wasn't on the same side as Li Zheng. Then he must be from High City. The people of High City must have an impression of her face. Even if she didn't put on makeup now, her bare face, bald head, and zombie eyes were already very different from her previous image. However, he didn't expect Huang Ming to be able to see through it. "Why can't you say it? Isn't your name Liu?" Lin Hao suddenly opened his mouth and was about to say her name. "Hey, ho kid, don't talk too much." Lin Qiao suddenly realized that the strange voice had drowned him out, so he glanced at him unhappily. Lin Hao glanced at her and asked curiously, "What's wrong? Don't tell me you can't let others know your real name." "But we all know it. Is there a problem?" "Because you're not a member of High City Base." Lin Qiao looked at him and then asked Li Zheng, "By the way, did you all work for the leader of the Death Fire before?" Although she suddenly had a name and identity that even she didn't know, it still felt a little strange coming from her mouth. Li Zheng nodded, "Yes, what's wrong?" Lin Feng and Mrs. Lin also looked at her with some prying and speculation in their eyes. Lin Qiao noticed Lin Feng and Mrs. Lin's eyes and took back her words, "Oh, nothing. I just asked out of curiosity." At this time, Lin Wenwen suddenly leaned over and pointed at the two zombies that were still quietly soaking in the bucket. He asked, "The two over there, are they zombies? What did you do to them?" Lin Qiao looked over and found that it was the two followers of Qiu Lily. She said, "Nothing, I just let them soak in the water for a few days." As she said this, she walked over and found that there was almost no energy left in the bucket. And at this time, the two zombies were facing the group of people over there, staring at them eagerly. Lin Qiao inexplicably wanted to laugh. Why did they look more and more like two big dogs? Lin Wenwen and Long Qingying followed curiously, and Lin Hao also pulled Feng Mingyu, who was not very willing to come. They followed 2 meters behind Lin Qiao and wanted to see what she was going to do. When they walked over, they suddenly found that the two zombies were staring at them with their dark and horrifying eyes. "Oh my god, these two are not going to jump out of the bucket to eat us, are they?" Feng Mingyu was shocked. Lin Qiao looked at him and said, "Come and try standing in front of him. See if he will jump out." How could this guy be so timid? Feng Mingyu shook his head desperately. If it weren't for Lin Hao who was holding him tightly, he would have already slipped away. Lin Wenwen stepped forward a little and curiously looked at the two zombies in the bucket. What are you doing? It was the first time he had seen such a quiet zombie, even though its face had been washed. Although their faces were washed, but that pale face, deep eye sockets, black eye circles, a mouth full of sharp teeth and a pair of dark eyes. No matter how you looked at it, it would scare a child. Lin Qiao said, transform. Seeing Lin Qiao come over, the two zombies let out a low roar. Lin Qiao looked at the water in the female zombie's bucket, and said to her with a cold face, look at you drinking so much water in the bucket, how can you not be full to death? Seeing that the female zombie's bucket only had water up to her waist, Lin Qiao was a bit speechless. Roar! The female zombie called out to her with some guilt, and then was attracted by the smell of Lin Wenwen and the others. So fragrant, so fragrant. I want to eat. I'm so hungry. Lin Qiao looked back at Lin Wenwen and the others, and said, the smell on your body is luring these two zombies. As soon as she finished speaking, Feng Mingyut suddenly broke away from Lin Hao's hand, turned around and ran. Hey, why are you running? What the fuck, are you even a man? Why are you so timid? Lin Hao looked at his back speechlessly and shouted. I am a man. But no one said that a man must not be afraid of zombies. Feng Mingyuk shouted back at him from afar. Lin Hao pointed at Lin Wenwen and Long Qingying and said, look, even the girls aren't afraid, what are you afraid of? Lin Wenwen and Long Qingying were curious as to why the two zombies could stay in the tub for a bath even though they were alive. It was obvious that they wanted to come over and eat their meat, but their bodies didn't move. Could it be that they were tied up? Chapter 268. Lin Qiao said, if you guys come any closer, these two are going to explode. She felt the two zombies were getting restless. Lin Wenwen took a step back and asked in confusion, are you trying to change their bodies by soaking them in the water like this? Can the bodies of zombies be changed? Lin Qiao said, why not? Don't you see that I changed as well? Lin Qiao turned to the two zombies and said, come out, stand on the side and don't move. The two zombies obediently stood up from the buckets, so their naked bodies were exposed in front of everyone. Of course, the zombies themselves didn't care, but Lin Wenwen and the others slightly tilted their heads. But soon, these people shamelessly turned around and carefully looked at the bodies of the male and female zombies, and even commented on them from the side. Lin Wenwen, the girl's body is not bad, big chest, thin waist, long legs, and very straight. Long Qingying. Yes. Lin Wenwen, the guy's body is also good, but I don't know if he can still be firm after becoming a zombie. Long Qingying, cough, Lin Hao, hey. I say, as a girl, can you not stare at a man's lower body and discuss whether it's firm or not? Lin Wenwen and Long Qingying turned their heads and saw a group of men standing next to Lin Hao. They all stared at the two of them with a strange expression. Long Qingying still looked a little embarrassed and then looked at Lin Qiao. Lin Qiao dragged the two buckets to the bushes, one in each hand. Then she poured the water in the buckets into the bushes and dragged the two buckets to the lake. After Lin Qiao filled the two buckets with water, he dragged the two buckets of water back to the side of the two zombies like Hercules. Go in and sit down. Seeing the two zombies obediently sit in the buckets, Lin Qiao suddenly reached out and pressed the female zombie's head, don't drink. If you drink again, I'll kill you. Whoa, the female zombie seemed to be very aggrieved and roared at her, but this time she didn't dare to drink anymore. Thus, she stared at the pile of fresh, living people on the side. Lin Hao, Li Zheng and the others were watching curiously from the side. Li Zheng asked in confusion, what is she doing? The two zombies looked like level 3 or 4 high-level zombies, but they were as obedient as puppies in front of her. What level is she? Lin Hao shook his head, and said, we don't know what level she is. It's probably level 6. Li Zhang said in surprise, level 6. Wouldn't that make him a king? Even the zombie king has evolved to this level. Lin Feng walked over from behind and pointed at Lin Qiao while saying, that's not necessarily true. She's a zombie that can talk. So far, we've only met 2 of them here, and there's one that we couldn't tell you about before. But after being modified by her, I can tell you. When he said that, Li Zhang and the others stared at him in disbelief. Modified by her. She has the ability to make zombies speak. That's terrifying. Lin Feng said, don't worry, at least she won't bring these zombies to harm people. Li Zhang looked at him and asked doubtfully, Captain, why are you so sure? Have you known her for a long time? Lin Feng shook his head, no, we've known each other for less than half a month. But she saved us, and she's going to help us build a base. Li Zhang stared at him for a while, and then asked, why would she save you guys? And also help us build a base. Lin Feng looked at him, and then turned to look at Lin Qiao. Actually, I don't know either. Maybe she has some reason that we don't know yet. Lin Qiao raised his head and looked at him, then turned around and walked towards the small space. Before walking, he said to Lin Wenwen and the others, stay away from them, they haven't woken up yet. They'll still attack at any time. Maybe it was because they were familiar with Lin Qiao, Qiu Lily, and Lu Jun. Lin Wenwen and the others didn't have much vigilance towards the zombies around them. In their hearts, they had almost classified them as zombies like Lin Qiao. But seeing Lin Qiao's reminder, they still gave face and moved away. The others returned to the sofa and sat down, looking at the strawberries that Lin Wen had picked up. Except for Lin Feng and the others, Li Zhang and the others didn't dare touch them. When Lin Qiao walked into the small space, Qing Wangxue was walking out with Lin Xiaolu. She said to Lin Xiaolu, Xiaolu, there are strawberries on the sofa. Hearing strawberries, Lin Xiaolu's eyes lit up, and she turned around and ran over there. Lin Qiao looked at Qing Wangxue and asked, do you know what her ability is? Qing Wangxue nodded, it seems to be a spiritual ability, she can hear the thoughts of others. But she needs to touch it. Lin Qiao looked at her in surprise, huh? Spiritual ability. That's a rare ability. Can she hear anything other than people? Like zombies? Qing Wangxue shook her head and said, I haven't tried it yet, I don't know. Lin Qiao nodded with a smile and said, but the spiritual ability is also very hard to guard against. Then she turned around and walked towards the small space. When she arrived at the small space, she found Lu Jun sitting at the door with a chair with a back, reading a book in her hand. Feeling Lin Qiao's arrival, she looked up. Lin Qiao looked inside and said, the little guy is asleep. Lu Jun looked back at Tong Tong, who was sleeping soundly on the bed, and nodded. She suddenly said to Lin Qiao, do you still remember them? Lin Qiao didn't react for a moment. Them? Who? Lu Jun used her chin to point in the direction of the sofa and said, didn't you save them? Didn't you save them because you know them? Lin Qiao shook her head blankly, I should know them. But I don't remember. You know, I don't remember anything in the 5 years after the apocalypse. I saved them because I think the enemy of our enemy is our friend. So I saved them in order to make trouble for Yang Jianhua. I don't know them. You even know their identities. Lu Jun nodded and said, you dare to save anyone in the space, aren't you afraid that someone will have bad intentions? What if someone wants to use your space and then find a way to threaten you? Lin Qiao heard this and smiled carelessly. She said, if it was a month ago, I wouldn't have exposed myself so casually. But now, if you want to threaten me, you have to have the ability. Thinking about it, if she wanted to know what a person was thinking about her, she could hear it as long as she was invisible. Even if the other party had bad intentions, she would have known in advance. And with her ability, even the leader of High City couldn't get any advantage in her hands. Who else? No matter what conspiracy they had, they couldn't escape her telepathy. No matter what methods they had, they wouldn't have any effect on her. Unless she couldn't detect that person's thoughts. Chapter 269. Lu Jun looked at her helplessly. You are really skilled and bold, not afraid of anything. Lin Chao said, this is called confidence, okay? And this is my world. Only I can make decisions in my world. You haven't answered my question. Do you know those people? Lu Jun looked at the group of people sitting on the sofa and said, many people in the Netherworld King's base know them. I'm sure they'll get to know each other. Lin Chao asked curiously, oh, do they still have anything to do with me? Lu Jun rolled his eyes at her and said, of course, they are your direct subordinates. Lin Chao looked at her in disbelief. Hey, it can't be. The few people I casually saved have become my subordinates. No wonder they were so familiar with Lin Feng and the others. I thought they all knew each other. Lin Luoran didn't pay much attention to these things after she saved them. She only knew that Mrs. Lin was surprised to untie them. Lin Chao thought that they knew each other, so she didn't bother with them. Then he left the space. Lu Jun said, did you let Yang Jianhua go? Lin Chao shrugged when she mentioned Yang Jianhua. He said, I've heard a lot about what he did to me, but I can't remember anything at all. That way, if I seek revenge on him, it would be meaningless to me now. I want to wait until I really remember everything, then I will slowly deal with him. Furthermore, with my current strength, even though he can't do anything to me. But I can't do anything to him. Lu Jun looked at her and said, that's true, but you don't know how to recover your memories. What if you go to that place and can't remember anything? Are you going to keep him alive? Lin Chao glanced at her and said, if I go to that place and still can't remember it, then I won't be able to remember it. In that case, he could only think of other ways. But if he doesn't know what's good for him and sends himself to me, I won't let him off like this time. Lu Jun looked at her and could only change the topic. Suddenly, he said, by the way, how did you get this small space? Do you think it would be more convenient if you had a few more of these small spaces? Look at your space, it's like your home now, always inviting people over. Or you can just rent a room from the outside, and you can also tidy up the furniture. Don't you think it's weird to put it in a bush? Lin Chao looked at the group of people and the neatly arranged furniture, but it did look a little strange. It wasn't that she didn't have such thoughts, but there was a problem. Well, the buildings outside are all built from the ground. As long as it's connected to the ground, I can't take it in. You see, it's just like the solar energy. I need someone to take it down before I can put it in. Lu Jun nodded. This was indeed a problem. Lin Chao said, I originally wanted to wait for Yuan Tianqing to come back before asking him for help. But if you want to create a small space like this, you might need to kill people or zombies or something else, as long as it's a space type. After the space was upgraded this time, she seemed to know a little about the properties of the space. Back then, when she absorbed that small space, it was because she had absorbed the other party's corpse core and developed it from her own space. Therefore, if she could obtain the energy core of a spatial ability user, or a zombie with a spatial ability, she would be able to create such a subspace again. Lu Jun looked at her in surprise. You mean, this small space is transferred from someone else to yourself? Can it be like this? Lin Chao suddenly looked at her and said, I find that you seem to know a lot of things. Your understanding is a bit too strong. Lu Jun smiled and said, "If you want to praise me for being smart, just say it. I won't be shy." Lin Qiao was speechless. Lu Jun asked, "By the way, what's going on outside?" Lin Qiao closed her eyes and looked outside. She opened her eyes and said, "The entire hotel building is sealed in ice. The outside can't get in, and the inside can't get out." Lu Jun asked, "Then, what about Yang Jianhua?" Lin Qiao's expression suddenly sank. She said, "I'll go out and take a look." Saying that, she turned around and disappeared through the door of the small space. Lin Qiao went out of the space and stood at the top of the stairs. She looked inside and outside the door, which was covered with a thick layer of ice and the soldiers under the ice. She turned her head and looked at the dozen or so ice sculptures next to her. They were all the soldiers around Yang Jianhua. Her face became gloomy, with a burst of coldness and murderous intent. The top of the stairs was sealed in ice. It should be said that it was inside the building, so the space was filled with ice by Yang Jianhua. From the outside, she could vaguely see that the stairs were filled with the soldiers she had knocked out before. Yang Jianhua actually froze the soldiers he brought here, including 2 squad leaders with 5th rank abilities. She didn't know that the 2 squad leaders just begged for mercy for these soldiers. It's useless to keep them. Anyway, they will be eaten by zombies on the way back. It's better for me to leave their bodies intact. Yang Jianhua said as he waved his hand, freezing the 2 squad leaders into ice sculptures. The other squad leaders were silent. Lin Qiao looked at these soldiers and felt a burst of pain in her heart. These soldiers actually didn't deserve to die because they were originally soldiers of the Pluto King's base. It was only because Yang Jianhua captured their relatives and family that they were forced to follow him. She didn't expect that in the end, they would end up like this. Yang Jianhua treated their lives like a group of cats and dogs. If he was in a good mood, he would let them go. If he was in a bad mood, he would kill them. For such a person, killing him 10,000 times was not excessive. Such a person also wanted to be the leader of a base. Even if she didn't kill him, it was estimated that others wouldn't keep him for long. Lin Qiao clenched her fists tightly. This ice wasn't ordinary ice. When the energy inside was exhausted, it would slowly melt or break. Lin Qiao didn't touch the ice sculptures on the roof because she knew that if she touched them, they would break into pieces. She turned and entered the space. She looked at Lu Jun and said, "Yang Jianhua froze the soldiers he brought to death." Lu Jun's eyes widened and said, "Why? Why would he kill his own people?" Lin Qiao said, "These people were forced to follow him. Maybe he knew in his heart that these people hated him. So he didn't intend to bring these people back to the base alive." Lu Jun said in disbelief, "Too cruel. Are these people's lives nothing in his eyes?" Lin Qiao sighed and said, "Maybe." Lu Jun's expression was a little shocked. She murmured, "I didn't expect Yang Jianhua to be this kind of person. A tyrant." Chapter 270. Lin Qiao looked at her and didn't say anything. Then she turned around and left the space. Then she went down from the top floor. She looked at the big iron cage and the turtles in the parking lot. They had all turned into ice sculptures. The whole building was like a huge ice cube. Lin Qiao could only release the people in the space to other places nearby. She couldn't guarantee that Yang Jianhua wouldn't turn back. She felt it was better to be careful. She found another hotel nearby, but it was much more low-key in terms of stars and decorations. It was only 6 stories high and didn't have many rooms. She walked towards the people in the space and saw Lin Qiao walking over. The others also stopped talking and looked at her. "What's wrong? I saw you go out just now. What's the situation outside? Lin Chao said. Yang Jianhua left. The whole building we used to live in was frozen. I changed places to send you guys out. Lin Feng looked at her and asked, can we go out now? Yang Jianhua left. Lin Chao said, yes. Lin Feng nodded, then we can go out now. I'm sorry to disturb you in the space. Lin Chao said, you guys hold each other's hands. I'll see if I can send everyone out at once. Lin Feng and the others looked at her in surprise and then held each other's hands in twos and threes. Lin Feng's family and Long Qingying held each other's hands or arms. Li Zheng's group plus Wei Jingchen and Xiao Wenqing were 7 people without abilities. They were split into 2 teams. Lin Chao grabbed Long Qingying's shoulder and chanted in his heart with everyone else. Go out. Then they saw her and Lin Feng's group disappear at the same time. After leaving the space, Lin Feng's group and Lin Chao stood in the middle of the lobby of the hotel. Lin Chao let go of Long Qingying and said, I'll bring the others out. Then she flashed into the space. She quickly brought Li Zheng's group out. Lin Feng said, hey, you can bring people at once now. Lin Chao nodded and pointed at Li Zheng's group. Yes. Thanks to them, I know I can bring people like this. I didn't think of it before. Li Zheng looked at Lin Chao and said, thank you for saving us this time. We didn't expect a zombie to save us. Lin Chao nodded to him. Where is this place? Lin Hao turned around to look at his surroundings and asked. Lin Chao said, this is a small hotel near the original hotel. Lin Hao nodded, then looked at Lin Feng and asked, do you want to look at the rooms? Lin Feng nodded. Of course. Find a clean room for Mom first. After saying that, everyone went upstairs to find a room. This location was only 100 to 200 meters away from the original hotel, so the zombies here had already been driven away by Chiu Lily. Now that the building was empty, they could barge in however they wanted. In the end, Lin Feng and the rest stayed on the 3rd floor while Li Zheng and the rest went to the 4th floor. Lin Chao looked through all the rooms on the 6th floor and chose 2. He brought Lu Jun and Xie Dong out of the space and let them tidy up the room. She turned around and walked out, going straight to the rooftop. Actually, she, Lu Jun, and Xie Dong didn't need to sleep, so it didn't matter if they didn't have a room or not. When they reached the rooftop, Lin Chao sat on the edge of the rooftop and waited for daybreak. The next day, Lin Chao sensed Chiu Lily's breath coming from afar. As soon as she noticed it, she found that Chiu Lily had a few zombies' breaths around her. Lin Chao couldn't help but be confused. What was going on? Why did she bring a bunch of zombies back when she was supposed to kill zombies for their cores? The more she sensed, the more she felt that something was wrong. Lin Chao stood up and frowned while looking at Chiu Lily's direction. Other than Chiu Lily, there were 2 other breaths that she recognized. It didn't take long for Chiu Lily to come here from the hotel. What happened to you guys? Why was the hotel building frozen? Chiu Lily was still wearing a clean princess dress, but her expression was shocked and angry. Lin Chao didn't answer her, but looked at the few buildings behind her, and the few figures that were scattered. About the hotel building, I'll explain it to you later. Now tell me, what's going on? At this time, among the few figures, one of them suddenly rushed towards Lin Chao. Roar roar, it's you. You bad guy. Looking at the zombie girl who suddenly rushed towards him, Lin Chao just calmly moved to the side and moved his feet. He dodged her claws. Why are you here? Ho ho ho, give me back my little sister. The girl zombie's face was already ferocious, and when she roared at Lin Chao, she looked even more ferocious and terrifying. With a roar, she was ready to pounce on Lin Chao again. At this moment, Chiu Lily suddenly roared at her, "Aw, go away." The zombie girl froze for a moment, then stopped moving and turned to look at Chiu Lily. "Roar, roar, roar, you're with her." Chiu Lily glared at her unhappily, and then yelled at her, "Aya, aya, aya. Ah, ah, ah. Yeah, it's none of your business. I'll beat you up if you keep hitting people." The zombie girl shrunk back a bit, then stared at Lin Qiao unwillingly. Turning around, he dodged to the side and sat on the top of the stairwell. Her legs were bare, and she stared at Lin Qiao below. Lin Qiao couldn't help but cover his forehead, and asked Chiu Lily with a headache, "Why did you bring her here? Where did you provoke her?" Chiu Lily said, I didn't provoke her, she suddenly came out to fight with me." Lin Qiao asked, "Do you know her?" "She's the zombie that stole children I told you about." "But now you know this child's personality." Chiu Lily pouted and said, "Oh. She's so annoying." Lin Qiao looked at the zombie girl, and asked, "She followed you here?" Chiu Lily nodded, "Oh, ah. Well, she can't beat me, and she likes to fight with me. I don't want to fight with her." Lin Qiao looked at the rest of the zombies. They were all level 5 zombie leaders, and there were 5 of them. One of them was Lin Qiao's old friend. It was the ice-type zombie uncle that had chased her and Xie Dong for a long time. Lin Qiao looked at the ice zombie leader, and the zombie leader was also staring at her. "What are you looking at? I'm not afraid of you now. If you have the guts, come and see how I'll cut you." Seeing that the zombie leader was staring at her, Lin Qiao couldn't help but yell at it. "Ah!" The zombie leader immediately roared at Lin Qiao, wanting to attack. But it just roared, and its body looked like it wanted to attack. But it looked at Chiu Lily, and then continued to roar at Lin Qiao, but it didn't move forward. Chapter 271. Lin Qiao looked at Chiu Lily and pointed at the level 5 zombies behind them. He asked, "Then what's going on with these? I told you to bring the corpse cores back. Why did you bring a bunch of living ones back?" She suddenly sniffed behind Chiu Lily and asked curiously, "Hey, there are many kinds of energy clusters on your body. What is it?" At this time, Chiu Lily pulled the small bag on her back to the front, opened it, and reached into it. Very quickly, he took out a few strangely shaped crystal cores and showed them to Lin Qiao. "Ah, yeah, I wanted to kill them, but they were afraid, so they traded these for me." Lin Qiao picked one up and examined it. He asked hesitantly, "Are these the energy cores of plants or animals?" She held each one in her hand and sensed it. She discovered that only 2 of them had energy similar to the vine energy core she had obtained earlier. Everything else was different. It felt strange. The other 2 should be corpse cores, but he didn't know what level they were. Chiu Lily stretched out her slender fingers and pointed at the energy cores in her palm one by one. "Ah! These 2 belonged to plants, these 2 belonged to zombies, and this one belonged to a level 5 zombie." Lin Qiao looked at the 5 level 5 zombies and the girl zombie on top of them. He asked curiously, "Did you bring them back? Or did they follow you here?" "I brought them back." "Didn't you say you were going to take in a zombie squad?" "So I brought them back." "Oh, I didn't bring her back. She followed me on her own." After saying that, Chiu Lily suddenly pointed at the zombie girl above. Roar! Hearing Lin Qiao mention herself, the female zombie lowered her head and roared at Lin Qiao. "Lin Qiao, this guy is a little dangerous. Can you control her?" Lin Qiao asked Chiu Lily. Chiu Lily tilted her head and looked at Lin Qiao. Didn't you say that she wasn't a bad person?" That's why I didn't chase her away, Lin Xiao, although she said so. But she didn't know if this zombie would attack people. Moreover, her temperament was unpredictable. It felt like she was a small explosive that would explode at any time. What if he was unhappy and attacked someone? Lin Xiao looked at the girl's scale-covered face and asked, "Why are you following me?" "I'm telling you, you can't attack the humans here. Otherwise, if I can't deal with you now, I'll let Lily deal with you." As she spoke, she pointed at Chiu Lily in front of her. Then the zombie girl's focus wasn't on the humans or the attacks, she seemed to have found something happy. He looked at Chiu Lily and roared, "Roar, roar, roar, so your name is Lily. Roar, 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 roar. Roar, 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 roar. Then my name is. What's my name?" Then, with a happy face, she muttered to herself as if she was about to make a decision, and then she was stuck. Then, his expression became confused and conflicted, and no one knew what he was thinking. Lin Xiao and Chiu Lily looked at her blankly. "Why are you so happy just because you know Lily's name? What's wrong with this guy?" Lin Xiao asked Chiu Lily, "How was your fight with her? She seems to be a bit scared of you right now, but she doesn't want to leave. What's going on with you two?" "She can't beat me, but I don't want to fight with her, and she won't leave if I chase her away." Lin Xiao said, "Then you have to keep an eye on her, don't let her go crazy here." As they were talking, the zombie girl suddenly raised her head. She excitedly yelled at Chiu Lily and Lin Xiao, "Roar, roar, 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 roar. Roar. Roar, roar. I got it, I want to be called Meng Meng, so I'll be called Meng Meng. Call me, hurry up and call me." Lin Xiao looked at her in confusion, "Why did you name yourself Meng Meng?" Chiu Lily's face twisted, but she didn't look at her, no way. Seeing that Chiu Lily ignored her, Meng Meng's face immediately fell. With a bitter expression, she yelled at her, "Roar, roar, roar, roar. Roar, 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 roar. Why? Will it kill me to call you?" Lin Xiao looked up at the one above, then down at the one in front of her. Suddenly, she waved at the one above, telling her to come down. Come down. Let's talk." Meng Meng looked at Lin Xiao and didn't give her any face. She only glanced at Chiu Lily from time to time, as if waiting for something. Lin Xiao laughed in her heart and looked at her. Her reaction was just like that of a child. Thinking that, she said to Chiu Lily, "Call her." Chiu Lily glanced at Lin Xiao and saw Lin Xiao nodding at her. Then, she unwillingly turned her head and yelled at Meng Meng. Ayayaya. Come down if I tell you to." Meng Meng looked at Chiu Lily, then at Lin Xiao. Then, she directly jumped down and came to Lin Xiao's side. Lin Xiao said to her, "You can stay by Lily's side if you want, but you can't attack people casually, understand?" Meng Meng looked at her with a blank face. Roar, 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 roar. What is attacking people? Lin Xiao looked at her with a headache. "Look, there are other people living downstairs. You can't hurt them or bite them. If you can do that, you can drink this." As she said that, a glass of water suddenly appeared in her hand. Hearing her words, Meng Meng looked at her with a blank look at first. Then, suddenly seeing the glass of water in her hand, her nose couldn't help but twitch. "It smells so good. What is this?" She looked at the glass of water in Lin Xiao's hand curiously and unconsciously raised her hand to take it. Lin Xiao stepped back and avoided her hand. "You have to agree to what I said just now before I can give it to you." Roar, roar, roar. Agree to what? Meng Meng looked at Lin Xiao in confusion and then at Chiu Lily. Seeing that Chiu Lily still didn't pay attention to her, she continued to look at Lin Xiao. Lin Chao said, "You can't hurt people casually, whether they are people here or people from other places. Understand? And you can't let the people here hurt others. Can you do that?" Meng Meng hesitated for a moment, then nodded with a confused expression. After nodding, she immediately stared at the glass of water anxiously. Lin Chao said, "Remember, you can't go back on what you promised." Then, he handed the glass to her. Qiu Lily looked at Lin Chao in confusion and asked, Aya. Why do I feel like she doesn't understand?" Chapter 272. Meng Meng took the cup and leaned to the side. She put the cup under her nose and sniffed it. Then she put it in her mouth and licked it. Her tongue was different from a normal zombie's. It was long and slender, and it nimbly swept the water before retracting back into her mouth. Meng Meng smacked her lips, and then her green eyes lit up. Then, he drank the water in the cup. After gulping it down, she handed the cup to Lin Chao. "Roar. I want more." Lin Chao took it and said, "You can only drink 3 cups a day." With that, she flashed and disappeared. She reappeared 2 seconds later with a cup full of water. Meng Meng took it and gulped it down again. Then she gave it to Lin Chao and looked at her, waiting for her next cup. Lin Chao filled another cup for her. Then she said, "Okay, that's enough for today. I'll drink it tomorrow." She felt a sense of saturation in her abdomen. This time, Meng Meng didn't drink against Lin Chao. She just quickly jumped to the roof of the stairwell like an animal. At this time, Lin Chao turned to look at the other zombies. There were 5 level 5 zombie leaders. Although she could kill 1 or 2, she had no chance of winning against 5 at once. "Lily, look after Meng Meng," Lin Chao said to Lin Chao. Then she turned around and walked in front of the level 5 zombies. She continued, "I'll take care of these level 5 zombies one by one." After saying that, the first person she stared at was the ice-type uncle that she had met before. Qiu Lily looked up at Meng Meng, and then she disappeared in a flash. As soon as she disappeared, Meng Meng, who was on the roof, suddenly froze and then stood up. After looking left and right for a while, she calmly sat down. Then she looked at Lin Chao with interest. Lin Chao's body just flashed and then suddenly disappeared. As soon as she disappeared, after a few seconds, the zombies on the roof slightly reacted. Because when Lin Chao filled the second and third cups of water for Meng Meng, she also disappeared, but appeared again after 3 or 4 seconds. But this time, she didn't appear for 3 or 4 seconds, and Qiu Lily wasn't there. The zombies started to look around in confusion, trying to find Lin Chao. However, they didn't know that Lin Chao had turned invisible and was already standing behind them. Lin Chao stood in front of the zombie uncle who had chased her before. She looked at the claw mark she had left on his chest. It was still the same and had not healed. But it was still sealed in ice by him. Sure enough, the wounds of these high-level zombies would not heal by themselves. Lin Chao didn't intend to put him into the space to deal with him. Instead, he suddenly appeared half a meter away from him. The moment he appeared, his hand was already clamped tightly on the other party's forehead. As long as she willed it, she could directly stab her claw into the other party's skull. Roar Dash, the ice-type zombie leader, was frightened by Lin Chao's sudden appearance, and its whole body exploded. Just as he roared, he felt as if someone was strangling him. He was rooted to the spot, not daring to move at all. Lin Chao calmly said to him, "Last time, I stole your food. And I stole your prey. You chased me for so long. Every time you hit me, I would hide from you. Now, let's have a fair fight. If you win, I will let you leave this place. If you lose, you can only listen to me in the future." Roar dash, the zombie uncle was very unwilling to give up and roared at her. Because the distance was a little close, his mouth was full of stench and rushed towards Lin Chao's face. Lin Chao immediately covered her nose and coldly said to him, "Or do you want me to crush your head right now?" While saying that, she tightened the claw on the other party's head. 5 nails that were harder than steel were gently inserted into his skull. Oh dash, the zombie uncle didn't feel any pain, but he felt danger. A strong sense of danger. Oh dash, hearing the zombie uncle's warning, the other zombies all put on a vigilant look towards Lin Chao. Lin Chao glanced at them, then said to the zombie leader, "How about it? Fight or not? If you don't fight, then die. Oh dash, fight. Don't kill me." Lin Chao said, "Don't think about running. Don't say that you can't escape from my hands. You can't escape from Lily's claws." After saying that, she let go of her claws and took a step back. After she let go of her claws, the zombie uncle immediately bent down, covered his head with his hands, and retreated step by step. A pair of dark eyes stared at Lin Chao with some fear. He couldn't understand why this kind of person who was clearly weaker than him not long ago was now so strong. The zombie uncle felt that it was a bit unfair, the other party was clearly stronger than him. He even said that he wanted to fight with him. Although he wouldn't directly kill him, he wouldn't win even if they fought. But thinking of what Lin Chao said just now, he could leave if he won. What if he could win? Thinking of this, the zombie uncle's heart suddenly ignited a little bit of hope. Although Chio Lily was nowhere to be seen, her breath was still suppressing here. So even if the other zombies saw that she wasn't there, they didn't dare to move. Lin Chao and the zombie uncle pulled a bit of distance, she stood in the same place. She calmly hooked her hand at the zombie uncle, indicating that he could start attacking. The zombie uncle immediately waved his hands at Lin Chao, and a group of irregularly sized ice suddenly fell from the sky, smashing towards Lin Chao. Then his figure moved forward, and jumped towards the wall next to him. Then he circled around Lin Chao, and jumped down from her side. Lin Chao found that these zombies' attack method was very chaotic, like a smart monkey picking up a lot of stones. They just kept smashing randomly, and didn't even need to aim at the place they hit. But the zombie uncle used his ability while rushing over, wanting to fight in close combat. The combination of these two could also be considered a kind of tactic. Looking at the large amount of stone like ice smashing towards her, Lin Chao turned her head and looked at the zombie uncle who had rushed to her side, and was rushing towards her from above. She suddenly twisted her body, and without dodging or dodging, she bent her legs and rushed towards him with her 2 claws. The zombie uncle didn't think that Lin Chao didn't dodge, but instead rushed towards him from below. He immediately used his 2 claws to grab Lin Chao. Lin Chao slightly moved her hand up, stretched out her left hand to block his claws, and then pushed to the side. At this time, her right hand bent at the same time, and waved towards the opponent. Pooh dash, the zombie uncle fell to the ground, and his landing posture was a bit awkward. The zombie uncle looked at the several deep knife cuts on his arm, and then looked at Lin Chao who fell to the other side as if nothing had happened. Chapter 273. Lin Chao crossed her arms and looked at him. She had already held back a lot of her strength. Otherwise, with such a long distance, with the distance of her claws, this zombie uncle would probably be cut into several pieces by her. Feeling Lin Chao's attack power and attitude, the zombie uncle's sense of crisis rose again, and slowly suppressed the little hope in his heart. He hesitantly took 2 steps back, pulling a little distance from Lin Chao. Sticky black blood flowed out from the wound on his arm, and the zombie uncle immediately wiped it with his hand. Immediately, a layer of ice formed on the wound, freezing the black blood that flowed out. He stared at Lin Xiao, closely staring at her. Then he fiercely rushed forward, much faster than before. In just a flash, he appeared in front of Lin Xiao, and at the same time, a burst of cold air rushed over. Lin Xiao only felt her whole body was cold, and a layer of ice suddenly formed under her feet, sticking her to the ground, making her unable to immediately move elsewhere. He also knew this move, not bad. Lin Xiao praised in her heart, and then when the other party was about to rush in front of her, she suddenly waved her hand, and a thick black gas rushed out, surrounding her whole body into a black shadow. And when the zombie uncle's claws were about to grab her body, he suddenly saw the appearance of this layer of black gas. But it immediately made him stop, and then quickly withdrew his hand, and his whole body retreated. The zombie instinct made him feel a sense of fear towards this kind of black gas. The zombie uncle quickly retreated to the furthest position from Lin Xiao, and then squatted there without moving. Lin Xiao waved the black gas, and the whole black gas floated above her head, floating. He spread a few strands over her feet and slowly dissolved the ice. She saw that the zombie actually squatted in the corner of the opposite stairwell, as if he didn't intend to attack again. She couldn't help but shout at him in surprise. Again. However, the zombie uncle just glanced at her. He lowered his head and didn't move. Lin Xiao, was this the rhythm of admitting defeat? The ice made by this zombie also carried his own energy. Although it wasn't as hard as Yang Jianhua's, Lin Xiao still found that the speed of the few strands of black gas was still a bit slow. So she released a few more strands of the black fog above her head and stuck them to the ice beneath her feet. After waiting for a full minute, Lin Xiao's feet finally came out of the frozen position. She raised her hand and collected the black fog into her palm. Then he walked toward the zombie uncle. Seeing Lin Xiao walking towards him, the zombie uncle wanted to run away immediately. But he knew he could not run far, and he was afraid of this strange creature. Therefore, with every step Lin Xiao took, he had to move a little to the side. Lin Xiao walked up to him and slightly lowered his head to look at him. You admit defeat. The zombie uncle quickly looked up at her, then immediately lowered his head. Lin Xiao knew that he was admitting defeat, but he didn't expect him to be so afraid of his black mist. Her hand flashed and a cup of water appeared in her hand. Lin Xiao gave the water to the zombie uncle. Here, drink it. The zombie uncle seemed to be attracted by the smell. He raised his head to smell and saw Lin Xiao handing him a glass of water. He curiously took it and smelled it, then smelled it again. Then he put it to his mouth and licked it. Then he poured the cup into his mouth. After he finished drinking, he looked at the empty cup and suddenly opened his mouth to chew on the cup with a crunch. Lin Xiao was shocked and quickly reached out to grab it. Was it necessary to bite the cup? At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the stairwell. There seems to be some movement up there. Miss Lu is up there. Could it be that Chiu Lily is back? But there seems to be energy fluctuations. Is there a fight? As the voice came up, 2 or 3 people quickly appeared at the stairwell door. Lin Hao, Li Zheng, and Lei Yao. The 3 people stood at the door and looked at Lin Xiao and the zombie uncle in the corner, and there were a few zombies that looked like level 4 or 5 on the roof not far away. Why are there so many high-level zombies? Are they all zombie leaders? Feeling that these zombies were very strong, Li Zheng immediately said vigilantly. Where did so many unfamiliar zombies come from? Lin Hao wasn't as nervous as him, but curiously looked at these zombies. He saw Lin Xiao holding a broken cup and facing a zombie in the corner, not knowing what he was going to do. Don't move, these are all level 5 zombie leaders. Lily just brought them back and hasn't trained them yet. They might attack you. You can either go down now or stand there and don't move. Lin Xiao turned and said to the 3 people. Suddenly, she looked up and shouted at Meng Meng, "You don't move either. Did you forget what you promised me?" Meng Meng, who was about to jump down, immediately sat up after being shouted at by Lin Qiao. Seeing Lin Qiao shouting above their heads, Lin Hao and the others then looked up. They saw a head poking out from the edge of the roof, staring at them with a pair of black eyes with a green vertical pupil in the middle. Ha! Lin Hao and the others were shocked, they couldn't sense the existence of this zombie at all. Meng Meng gave them a very strong sense of oppression, and this zombie's eyes were full of aggression, not as gentle and calm as Qiu Lily. Li Zheng and the others hadn't encountered a level 6 zombie king, but they had encountered a level 5 zombie leader. Seeing so many of them here, they didn't dare to move even if they wanted to. Because Lin Hao had seen Qiu Lily before, he knew that this was a zombie king like Qiu Lily. But this one looked very wild, as if it would attack at any time. After the three of them appeared, the other zombies immediately stared at them. Lin Hao and the others felt their scalps go numb. Can we go down? This place is so scary. At this moment, a white shadow suddenly appeared in the middle of the rooftop platform. She shouted at the other 4 zombie leaders who were standing far away. Then they saw the 4 zombie leaders jump towards their building. Seeing this situation, Lin Hao, Li Zheng and the others immediately went into a state of alert. But only Li Zheng and Lei Yao were in a state of alert, Lin Hao was only in a state of half alert. Because he believed that with Lin Qiao and Qiu Lily here, they wouldn't let these zombies attack them. Hearing the summons, the uncle zombie thought of Qiu Lily, but Lin Qiao was still standing in front of him, not moving. Should he go or not? If he didn't go, would he be eaten by the big zombie? In the minds of these zombie leaders, they all regarded the king zombie as an existence similar to the big zombie. Chapter 274. He looked at Lin Qiao in front of him again. In fact, he didn't want to go to Qiu Lily's side. Because he still wanted the kind of water that his kind had just given him. Lin Qiao sensed his thoughts and said, "No, you can only drink 1 cup a day. And there are conditions." Woo! The zombie uncle looked at her quietly, waiting for her next sentence. Lin Qiao said, "First, you have to listen to me. Second." Then she pointed at Lin Hao and the others and continued, "Them, and the people downstairs like them. You can't hurt them, and you can't let them get hurt. Do you understand? Nod if you understand." Although the zombie uncle's IQ wasn't as high as an adult's, but he had the IQ of a 7 or 8-year-old child. He could also understand Lin Qiao's words. He immediately nodded. Lin Qiao could easily sense that the zombie uncle had already submitted to her. So even if the zombie uncle dared to lie to her, he would only be courting death. Lin Qiao raised her hand to him, "Okay, stand up. Do as I say, I will give you 1 cup every day." The zombie uncle slowly stood up and looked at Lin Hao and the others. Then he raised his nose and sniffed around before looking at Lin Qiao. Lin Qiao pointed at a tall building more than 10 or 20 meters away and said to him, "You go there and stay. Don't run around, just stay in that building. That building is your turf." The zombie uncle turned his head and looked at the building Lin Qiao pointed at, then looked back at the broken cup in her hand. Then he looked at Qiu Lily. He couldn't guarantee that the big zombie wouldn't let him go. Qiu Lily felt his gaze and turned back to him and shouted, Aya. Go, listen to her." After getting Qiu Lily's order, the zombie uncle immediately relaxed. After looking at Lin Qiao, he immediately turned around and jumped down from the top of the building. Then he stopped at the top floor of the building Lin Qiao had just pointed at, lying on the corridor and looking at them. Lin Qiao looked at Lin Hao and the others, who didn't dare to move, and found that the 3 of them were looking at her strangely. Lei Yao, who didn't speak much, quietly asked Lin Hao, "Is she planning to let these zombie leaders become our bodyguards?" Lin Hao also looked at Lin Qiao, Qiu Lily and the other zombies with a confused face, and replied softly, "I don't know, but if we didn't hear it wrong, it should be like this. It's the first time I've heard of a zombie leader being our bodyguard, and we're the winners," Li Jing suddenly chimed in. Lin Qiao glanced at Meng Meng above their heads and suddenly waved at her. "Come down." Meng Meng looked at her but did not move. Lin Qiao looked at her with a smile. "Well, you didn't listen to me. Then don't ask me for water in the future." Meng Meng immediately leaped down from above and landed silently in front of Lin Qiao. After drinking the water, she was no longer as hostile towards Lin Qiao. The rejection in his heart had been reduced by more than half, but he still felt a little uncomfortable. Seeing Lin Qiao turn around and walk towards Qiu Lily, she silently followed behind. From time to time, she would look back at Lin Hao and the others. The three of them were originally planning to quietly move back, wondering if they should sneak away while the zombies on the rooftop weren't paying attention. They froze when Meng Meng looked at them. Lin Qiao walked in front of Qiu Lily and looked at the four zombie leaders. He curiously asked Qiu Lily, "What superpowers do they have?" Qiu Lily pointed at them one by one and said, "Ah, ah, 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 ah. Fire, wood, earth, metal." The one with the fire element was the child, who looked to be around 10 years old. He was a little boy, but he looked a little too scary. His head was fine, but his mouth had been torn open from top to bottom. His chin was hanging from his neck, and his bloody mouth was split open all the way to his ears. There was a faint red light in his eyes. The one with the wood element was a young girl. Her short hair was stuck to the top of her head by blood. She was very tall, about 1.7 meters. She was thin, with long legs and a small chest. Her body was badly mutilated. She should have been a clean and neat girl when she was alive. The other male was about 30 years old, and his head was well preserved. His arms, chest, abdomen, and other places were full of bloody holes. He was an earth element superpower zombie. The last one was an old man with messy hair. He even wore a pair of glasses. What was even more strange was that the glasses were shiny, and not dirty at all. The old man was wearing a good tang suit, and he looked the cleanest out of the four. Lin Qiao looked at them, and they were also looking at Lin Qiao. They had just seen her fight with the zombie uncle, and they were inexplicably afraid of Lin Qiao's black mist. Seeing Lin Qiao approaching them, the four zombies were afraid that Lin Qiao would use the black mist to attack them at any time. 4 pairs of dark eyes stared at her. At this time, Qiu Lily shouted towards the 4 zombie leaders, "Aya, Aya, Aya, Aya. What are you looking at? You have to listen to her." The 4 zombie leaders immediately turned to look at Qiu Lily, and their eyes were full of confusion. Although Lin Qiao was indeed powerful, her aura wasn't enough to suppress them. They felt very dissatisfied that they had to unconditionally listen to a zombie that wasn't much stronger than them. Qiu Lily felt their dissatisfaction and said, "Ah, ah, 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 ah. If you don't accept it, you can fight her too." The 4 zombies looked at Lin Qiao with aggression in their eyes. Lin Qiao smiled faintly, and then turned her hand. A cloud of black mist kept coming out rapidly, and then formed a dark cloud behind her, slowly rising above everyone's head. Seeing the black mist above their heads, the 4 zombie leaders couldn't stay calm. Roar, 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 they took 2 steps back, and looked up nervously at the black mist above their heads. Even Meng Meng couldn't stay calm at this time, and she jumped back 2 steps. Suddenly she realized that Qiu Lily didn't move, so she retreated. Then she slowly moved to Chiu Lily's side. Wow, so her ability isn't space. Why did this strange mist come out again? Lin Hao and the other two wanted to slip down, but they suddenly felt darkness above their heads. Then they realized that a small part of the sky above their heads was filled with black clouds. Could it be that she has two abilities? Li Zheng said in shock. Lei Yao stared at the reaction of the zombie leaders, and pondered. There seems to be something in the black clouds, and the zombie leaders seem to be very afraid. The other two immediately looked at the zombie leaders, and sure enough, they all had a nervous posture and expression. Chapter 275. While Chiu Lily was dealing with the new zombie leaders on the rooftop, there were people running upstairs. Feng Mingyu ran to the last flight of stairs on the top of the building. When she reached the last step, she heard a voice. She saw 3 men standing at the door, not moving at all. Their eyes were looking outside, but she couldn't tell what they were looking at. Hey, you guys are really on the rooftop. What are you looking at? Feng Mingyu ran over and asked curiously. Li Zheng and the other two turned to look at him in unison, not saying a word. Then, he turned his head and continued to look outside. Feng Mingyu's curiosity was piqued by their actions. She walked up to Li Zheng's back and stuck her head out from his shoulder. As a result, he saw a group of zombies standing in the middle of the rooftop platform, all of them dripping with blood. Ha! Hearing his scream, the 3 people on the roof and a few zombies were scared by him. They turned their heads in unison, only to see the back of a person running down the stairs in a panic. In the blink of an eye, he was gone. Motherfucker, that scared me to death. This brat, even if we aren't scared by zombies, we will be scared to death by him sooner or later. Li Zheng was shocked by Feng Mingyu's sudden scream. Lin Hao and Lei Yao's expressions were basically the same as his. Lin Hao said, has he always been so timid? Why are they so afraid of zombies? How did you get here? Li Zheng sighed and said, don't mention it. Lei Yao said, basically, they came here shouting and screaming. On the other side, Lin Qiao turned around and said to the 4 zombies, you guys don't like it? Do you want to have a fight? The 4 zombies stared at Lin Qiao, but then they looked up at the black fog above their heads. This made them hesitate whether they should make a move or not. At this time, Chiu Lily became impatient and shouted unhappily, "Ah, ah, 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 ah." Alright, stop playing around. If I tell you to listen to her, then listen to her. If you dare to disobey, I'll dig out your brains. After saying that, her face suddenly showed a fierce light, and she bared her teeth at the 4 zombies. Woo dash, the 4 zombie leaders immediately cowered and shrunk their heads, not daring to move. Seeing that Chiu Lily was about to flip out, Lin Qiao stopped playing with them. He retracted the black fog and returned the light to the sky. She threw the broken cup in her hand to the corner, and then her hand flashed. She took out another glass of water and waved at the little boy. Alright, come over here first. The little boy glanced at Lin Qiao but did not move. He turned to look at Chiu Lily. Chiu Lily didn't even bother to talk to him. She just flashed her claws at him. The little boy trembled and immediately leaned toward Lin Qiao obediently. Lin Qiao looked at his bloody mouth and chin and handed him the cup of water. Drink it. Speaking of which, this child's jaw is about to drop. How is he going to drink? The little boy carefully took the water and glanced at Chiu Lily from time to time. Then, he took the cup and sniffed it. Then, he was attracted by the energy in the water. After sniffing it, he raised the cup and poured the water down his throat. Soon, he finished the cup. After drinking it, he closed his eyes and felt it. Then, a red light flashed in his eyes and he raised his head to look at Lin Qiao. Lin Qiao took back the cup and pointed at Lin Hao and the others. Alright, you can only have 1 cup a day. Also, you have to be like him and not hurt the people here. You can't let them get hurt. At this time, Lin Hao and the others were suddenly shocked by Feng Mingyu and suddenly weren't that nervous anymore. They were just watching. Qiu Lily urged Lin Qiao with dissatisfaction, ah, 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 ah. Hurry up, I still need to evolve. Saying that, she stretched out her hand and spread out the energy core in her palm. Lin Qiao nodded and continued to give the other 3 zombie leaders cup after cup of water. When it came to the old man, the way he drank water was different from the other zombies. The others couldn't wait and poured it into their mouths. When it came to the old man, he poured the water, blew it and drank it slowly. Lin Qiao cursed in his heart, hey! The water is cold, why are you blowing it? Can't you drink faster? Although the action of taking 1 sip at a time looks very elegant. Indeed, the old man's action of drinking water was very elegant. And when he received the cup, he looked left and right. Only Lin Qiao knew that this guy was actually looking for a sofa or chair. You actually need to find a sofa or chair to drink water. Do you have to be so particular? Hey, you're just a zombie. Not only was Lin Qiao a little confused, even Lin Hao and the other 2 who were watching from the side looked at him strangely. After drinking, Lin Qiao found a seat for each of them. After saying a few words, he took the energy cores from Qiu Lily. Little man has been sleeping recently, I will wake her up first. I will let you in later. Qiu Lily nodded to him. Then she watched Lin Qiao disappear in front of her. After Lin Qiao entered the space, she felt that there were still a lot of people's scents in the space. They were all left by Lin Feng and Li Zheng, the air was also filled with their scents. But the smell was still a bit faint. She also didn't know where the air in this space came from, and where it came from. Lin Qiao stood by the lake with a few energy cores, and shouted towards the lake, little man, wake up, there are energy cores. After shouting a few times, there was no response from the lake. Lin Qiao looked at the lake blankly. This little man couldn't wake up, what should she do? If it was in the past, as long as she brought these energy cores and corpse cores into the space, little man should be able to sense it. Why didn't it work on her this time? Could it be that she wanted her to dive to the bottom of the lake to give them to her? Little man, Lin Qiao tried to shout again, but there was still no response. Looking at the calm lake, Lin Qiao sighed. Okay, she will go down and take a look. And she didn't have time to go down to the lake to see what the situation was like. She put the energy cores on the ground, and then took off her clothes. In the end, she picked up a few energy cores naked and walked out of the lake. The cool water was filled with dense energy, making her feel very comfortable. She didn't feel cold, so she walked down as if nothing had happened. She walked until the water reached her chest, and then fiercely dived into the bottom of the lake. In the water, she didn't need to breathe. So all she needed to do was move her hands and feet, and swim towards the bottom of the lake. The clear water didn't have any color in her eyes. But as long as she slightly squinted her eyes, she could see a dark green in front of her. Lin Qiao sensed the location of little man's breath, and then kept swimming down. Chapter 276. But Lin Qiao swam for a long time. She felt that several minutes had passed, but she still couldn't see the bottom. She clearly sensed that little man was very close to her, but she couldn't see the bottom after swimming for so long. So strange. Holding the energy core in her hand, Lin Chao didn't know how long she had been swimming. 1 hour, maybe 2 hours. Finally, she saw a shadow appear in the lake below, and then the shadow became more and more obvious. Soon, Lin Chao reached a dark red place. She didn't expect it to be so deep. It was too terrifying. When Lin Chao got closer, she realized that it was a dark purple ground. She stood on the ground and looked around. But she couldn't see the end. She didn't see Little Man. But the position she sensed was right here, so where did Little Man go? The feeling of stepping on the ground made Lin Chao feel strange. The dark purple ground was actually soft. It felt like stepping on a yoga mat. In the water, she had a lot of resistance, but very little buoyancy. So she didn't seem to want to float up. Lin Chao took 2 steps under the water. Her footsteps were very heavy. But she couldn't see Little Man, so she could only look around. At the same time, she called Little Man in her heart, hoping that she could hear her. But as she walked, she suddenly saw a sunken place. She walked over and took a look. Wow, what a long gap. Because the light in this lake was very dim, Lin Chao didn't notice the gap here. Only now did she see it when she walked over. It was about 2 meters wide, and it was dark below. She couldn't see anything clearly. What the hell, what kind of place is this? Feeling that Little Man's breath came from below the gap, Lin Chao thought about whether she should go down. But she couldn't see anything below. Even when she squinted her eyes, she could only see a dark red bloody mess. Although there wasn't any sense of danger below, she couldn't see or feel anything, which was even more dangerous. But Little Man was indeed below, and she really wanted to go down. She had to. After making up her mind, Lin Chao put her feet on the ground at the edge of the gap. Then she used her fingernails to dig into the soft ground. Strangely, after her fingernails dug in, it was actually very stable to support her drooping body. Lin Chao slowly climbed down claw by claw, and looked up. He found that he could only see a patch of black, and nothing else. What kind of place did she come to? Lin Chao, who originally thought that he would have to climb for a long time to reach the ground, did not expect to suddenly step on the ground after climbing only a few meters. So fast. As soon as she turned around, she squinted her eyes, and only then did she see a faint green, extremely large sphere. Lin Chao walked over and gently touched the green ball. Sure enough, he felt vines. The energy on it was very, very thin. No wonder Little Man wanted to curl up into a ball and sleep. Lin Chao pressed a corpse core in his hand onto the large ball. When the corpse core touched the vines began to tremble. She immediately saw the faint emerald green light in front of her suddenly flash, and a vibration came from her hand. She was overjoyed, and immediately pressed all the other energy cores into Little Man's body. As expected, the energy core in his hand suddenly disappeared. Then, the vines under his hands began to move. The faint green light in front of him grew brighter and brighter, and the light quickly shone outwards. It illuminated the entire place into a sparkling emerald green. The big round ball quickly transformed like a monster. The vines that were originally curled up began to dance and sway. Then, the swaying vines stretched out in all directions. A vine as thick as an arm quickly wrapped around Lin Chao's waist. Ma 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 ma, a joyful cheer immediately sounded in Lin Chao's heart. She couldn't speak in the water, so Lin Chao could only say in her heart, "Send me up." Okay then, Lin Chao felt his waist being lifted, and his whole body was lifted into the air. A force pushed Lin Chao upwards. The speed at which she went up was much faster than when she came down, and not long after, she came out of the water. After reaching the shore, when Lin Chao walked up, Little Man let go of the branch. While walking, Lin Chao said, "Little man, hurry up and absorb those energy cores. Then help Lily activate her body's functions." Little Vine's branch touched Lin Chao's arm and a message was sent. "Okay, but it will take a long time for Little Man to absorb the energy. Mama has to wait patiently for Little Man, okay?" Lin Chao walked to the shore and nodded as he bent down to pick up his clothes and put them on. The little vine retracted its branches and sank into the water. This time, Lin Chao didn't feel that she wasn't active as soon as she entered the water. On the contrary, because she had adapted to the quietness at the bottom of the lake, Little Man was now very active. After Little Man retreated into the water, Lin Chao knew that she needed some time to absorb the energy. So she put on her clothes, turned around and walked towards the forest. When she crossed the large meadow and arrived at the forest, only then did she see a large pile of supplies she had collected from uptown and the Peace Lake district. Because she had purposely placed them in the forest, the people outside did not notice these things when they came in. There were various cabinets made of steel, and some barrels and boxes. It was filled with a lot of rice and flour, as well as some dry products. She only looked for a few storage points that were far away, but they were all storage points that no one had discovered. So she received a lot of food. According to a person's appetite, the food here would be enough for him to eat for 5 years. Lin Chao looked at these strange trees and didn't know where they came from. What use did they have in this space? While she was walking around in the woods, looking at the trees, a voice suddenly rang out. Suddenly she felt a strong energy vibration coming from the direction of the lake. Lin Chao stopped and turned her head to look. Then she turned around and walked out of the forest. When they got out of the forest, they saw that the water in the lake was surging violently, and it seemed to be rising slowly. Lin Chao quickly ran to the side of the lake and moved the chairs to the forest. Then she shouted at the 2 zombies who were still sitting in the barrels, staring at the lake in horror and not daring to move. "You 2 don't stare, come out quickly. Help move the things. First bring your 2 buckets up." Hearing Lin Chao's command, the 2 zombies immediately jumped out of the barrels. Naked, they each dragged a bucket and ran towards Lin Chao. The energy in the lake was too strong, making them think that they were like ants, so weak that a wave could kill them. Lin Chao's words were simply their salvation. Chapter 277. Lin Chao dragged the chair by the lakeside to the clearing before the small space, then ran over and dragged the few pots and buckets to the clearing as well. After that, she walked to the lakeside and looked at the rising water. She turned to look at the sofas, tables, and cabinets. She didn't know if the water in the lake would rise to those areas. She felt that it was better to move those areas. The pile of pumpkins and potatoes was still there. Lin Chao looked at the 2 zombies who were dragging buckets to her. Ignoring their naked bodies, she pointed at the grass and said, "Pour the water in there, then put the buckets over there. After that, come over here and move these things over there too." She pointed at the clearing before the woods. The woods and the lakeside were separated by about 200 meters of grass. She didn't know how high the water in the lake would rise. However, it was better to take precautions first. She decided to move everything away. After the last upgrade, there was a clean clearing between the woods and the grassland. The same was true for the area in front of the small space. Lin Chao watched the 2 zombies carry the pumpkins and potatoes to the woods and throw them into a pile. After that, she moved the furniture to the small space one by one. After moving the sofas, tables, cabinets, and beds into the small space all by herself, she turned back to look at the lakeside. She found that the lake water had flooded the stove that she built with stones earlier. The 3-meter-wide area between the grassland and the lake was flooded as well. The water in the lake had risen to the grass. Squeak! A few rats were heard. Lin Qiao turned and found that the 2 rats had hidden under the bed that she put earlier. The gray rabbit had run out of the grass as well. It was squatting by the edge of the grassland, looking at the strawberry field and then at the lake. It seemed that it was worried that the strawberry field would be flooded by the lake water. However, when Lin Qiao turned back, she found that something wasn't right. Why did the small space move away again? Looking at the small space which was meters away from her, Lin Qiao was a little confused. Earlier on, she was focused on moving things, so she didn't notice the changes in the space. Now that she had some time, she found that the small space had moved away again. She raised her head and looked around, finding that the space had grown larger again. The wood seemed to have grown larger as well. The water in the lake was still rolling and had not calmed down. She turned around and saw that the 2 zombies had finished moving the potatoes and pumpkins. They were squatting far away from the lake. Lin Qiao watched as the lake water slowly covered the grassland about a meter deep. Then, the lake water suddenly calmed down. Then, a few arm-thick vines emerged from the water. Viny's vines didn't change in thickness. What had changed was its color. Its skin had become jade white. If Lin Qiao didn't go to the bottom of the lake, she might not even know how long Viny's vines were. Lin Qiao guessed that she was at least 1,000 meters deep, because she didn't know how deep she was. She only knew that she had been down for a very long time. The jade-white branches had a few green leaves on them. They floated on the water surface and reached toward Lin Qiao. Lin Qiao walked to the lakeside and looked at the jade-white vine coiling around her hand. However, the first sentence that Viny said wasn't to her. "Mama, the 2 people over there are so ugly without clothes, their buttocks and balls are exposed." Lin Qiao stayed silent. "They're not human beings anymore. They don't care about their buttocks and balls," she said in her head. Viny said, "But..." Viny's eyes hurt so much, Lin Qiao paused. "Alright, I'll let them put on some clothes later. How are you now? Have you upgraded?" Viny twisted the few vines in the water and said, Yeah, I upgraded again. I'm at level 3 now. I'll be able to go out when I reach level 5. But now, I can see the outside." "It's so big outside?" Lin Qiao asked with surprise. Lin Qiao asked, "Can you see the outside? How do you see it?" Viny said, Yeah, I see it from Mama's body." "My body?" Lin Qiao was confused. Yeah, Viny responded. Lin Qiao thought for a moment but still failed to figure out how she saw it. She guessed that Viny should be able to sense the outside world through her senses. But now, she didn't care about that for now. Viny had upgraded, so she should be able to activate and heal Chio Lily's body. "Alright, Viny, you can heal Lily's body now, right?" Viny answered, Yes. "I'm full now." Lin Qiao understood what Viny meant. She now had enough energy to work. "Alright," she said, "I'll go out and bring Lily in. Wait here." While speaking, she didn't immediately flash out, but turned and walked to the closet. She rummaged through the closet and found 2 sets of adult clothes. After that, she waved at the 2 zombies. "You 2, come here." The 2 zombies looked at her, then hesitantly walked to her. Lin Qiao handed the clothes to them and asked, "Do you know how to wear them?" The 2 zombies reacted differently. The male zombie gazed at the clothes in Lin Qiao's hands, but didn't take them over. The female zombie took over the clothes with curiosity, then tore them and looked at them from side to side. Rip, she tore apart his shirt in just a few moments. Ouch! Lin Qiao looked at the female zombie with confusion, then at the male zombie. At last, she couldn't help but put one hand on her waist and the other on her forehead. Then, she accidentally cut her hair from the top of her head to the back of her head. Lin Qiao rubbed her bald head, then looked at the two zombies and sighed. She said to the female zombie, "You can't tear this. You need to put it on. Do you understand? I'll put it on for you once, and you two need to remember it." After that, she picked up the underwear and squatted on one knee. Then, she said to the female zombie, "Come on, put your feet in." The female zombie looked at her with surprise, as if she was looking at a psychopath. Lin Qiao waited for a while, but the female zombie didn't respond. So, she raised her head and saw the look in her eyes. "Ah! What on earth am I doing? Putting clothes on a zombie was fine, but why is the zombie looking at me as a psychopath? What are you looking at? Put your feet in. Left feet. Not this one, that one. Now, put this one in. Put it here. I've already put one over there. Don't put two. Stand still." After putting the underwear on for the female zombie, Lin Qiao made her put on a super short one. She didn't find any trousers in the closet, but either a skirt or a pair of shorts. So, Lin Qiao casually found her a pair of shorts and a t-shirt. Unexpectedly, the female zombie tore the top off. Lin Qiao raised her head to look at the large wound on the female zombie's forehead. She felt that the wound might scare the child. So, when she went back to the closet to find clothes, she found a baseball cap. She didn't have any clothes for the female zombie, so she put the cap on the female zombie. Then, she put the cap on the female zombie's head. It looks like it. Chapter 278. After dressing the female zombie, Lin Qiao then turned around to dress the male zombie. Although she deliberately avoided her line of sight, when she squatted down, her line of sight just happened to meet the male zombie's big bird. She silently turned her face to the side and stretched out her hand to open the man's underwear for him. But before she could say anything, she saw that this guy had already put his feet in. The two zombies weren't stupid, but they hadn't seen what others did before. If they had to do it themselves, they would be confused and not know how to do it. But after seeing it once, they would basically remember to do it. In fact, their learning ability was quite amazing. After quickly dressing the two zombies up, Lin Qiao immediately flashed out of the space with the two zombies. They had been soaking in the space for 2 or 3 days. It was time to let them out for some fresh air. As soon as they came out, they found that there was only one zombie on the entire roof. It was Meng Meng. She sat at the top of the stairs and was looking up at the gray sky. Seeing Lin Qiao suddenly appear with two zombies beside her, she immediately looked down at her. "Ow, ow, 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 you finally came out." Lin Qiao looked at her and asked, "Where's Lily?" Meng Meng jumped down and flashed in front of her. "Ow, ow. Liar. You said you would give me 3 cups of water a day. Now you owe me 3 cups a day, 6 cups in 2 days. 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. 15 cups." Lin Qiao looked at her speechlessly. She didn't even answer her question and only cared that she didn't give her water. 5 days. I've been in the space for 5 days. Lin Qiao didn't think that it would be that long. Meng Meng circled around her and roared, "Ow, ow, ow, water, 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 water." Lin Qiao looked at her helplessly. Okay, stop circling. Here you go." Saying that, she suddenly had a water ladle in her hand and filled it with water from the lake. There were more than 3 cups here. Meng Meng immediately reached over and took the water ladle, turning around to leave. Lin Qiao was about to call her when a white shadow flashed and appeared beside Lin Qiao. I'm here." Chiu Lily called out to Lin Qiao as soon as she came out. Lin Qiao looked at her and said, "Well, that's enough. Little Man has already absorbed the energy and is waiting for you to go in before filtering the energy for you. It can help you activate your body's functions." Qiao Lily nodded excitedly. Yeah. Faster, faster. Lin Qiao turned around and said to the two zombies, "Stay nearby and don't run around." Then, he pulled Qiao Lily and disappeared together. After Lin Qiao disappeared, the two zombies immediately dodged to the side and directly jumped off the roof, one on each side. He ran downstairs. This was because Mingming's aura made them very uncomfortable, and there were many other auras around them that were more powerful than them. If Lin Qiao hadn't said anything, they wouldn't have dared to move. However, as soon as Lin Qiao spoke, they immediately wanted to stay away from Mang Mang. After Qiao Lily and Lin Qiao disappeared, Mang Mang happened to be gulping down water. She only paused for a moment before she stopped paying attention. After Lin Qiao brought Qiao Lily into the space, Qiao Lily looked at the changes in the space in surprise. She noticed it as soon as she came in. "Wow, it's getting bigger," Lin Qiao nodded and said, "Yes, once Little Man leveled up, the space seems to get bigger. Take off your clothes and go into the water." Then, she shouted towards the lake, "Little Man, take Lily down." Puff puff puff, a few jade white vines jumped out of the water and waved towards the shore. Hearing that she had to take off her clothes, Qiao Lily hesitated. She had to take off her clothes. Lin Qiao said, "Even if you don't take them off, they'll all disappear in a moment. Go, I won't look. I'm going out." Then, she turned around and disappeared in a flash. Actually, even if she wasn't here, she could still sense what was happening inside. After Lin Qiao disappeared, Qiao Lily looked at the white vines quietly waiting for her by the lake and pinched the hem of her skirt. However, after a few seconds, she still started to take off her clothes. But before she took off her clothes, she looked around again. Suddenly, she ran to the place where the furniture was, took a chair and carried it to the edge of the lake. Then, he took off his clothes and folded them neatly on the chair. Then, she awkwardly covered her chest with one hand and her lower body with the other. She walked towards the lake in an unnatural manner with her bare feet. The little vine stretches its branches to her side, and then slowly wraps around her wrist, pulling her into the lake. "Sister Lily, don't be afraid, Little Man will be very gentle." Qiao Lily was surprised to hear a voice that didn't belong to her in her heart. She opened her mouth. "Oh. Little Man." Little Man replied, It's me, Little Man is here." Qiao Lily asked, "Will it hurt?" "Little Man, a little, you have to be patient." After Qiao Lily got into the water, Little Man's branches wrapped around her waist and legs. Then, it gently pulled her towards the lake. Lin Qiao looked at the sky outside the space and found that it should be afternoon. She sensed the aura around her and found that the zombie leaders were obediently staying in their original positions. But at this time, they were all looking at her with a kind of desire in their eyes. She knew what they were longing for, just like Mang. They were thinking about the lake. And the aura of the dozens of living people in the building was very strong. Only Yuan Tianqing hadn't come back yet. It had been a few days, and she didn't know when that man would come back. Although she might not be able to invite anyone the first time, it wouldn't be good to drag it out for too long. Lin Qiao looked at the 5 zombie leaders and waved his hand, calling them over. "You guys come over." As soon as she spoke, a few figures immediately appeared in front of her with a whooshing sound. Even the old man, who seemed to pay attention to etiquette, was a little impatient. The 5 zombie leaders came in front of Lin Qiao and stood in a line. 5 pairs of pitch-black eyes with a tinge of other colors stared straight at her. Lin Qiao sensed the number of cups in the space. Other than the ones used by Lin Feng and the others, the rest were placed on the table in front of the sofa. The others were still in the cupboard. She could only go in and stand in front of the cupboard. Then, she opened the cupboard and took out 5 glasses. She could hold 5 glasses in her hands, but she couldn't hold 5 glasses of water. So she turned around and shouted at Meng Meng. "Are you done drinking? Give it back to me when you're done." Meng Meng handed her the water ladle in her hand. Lin Qiao put away the ladle and quickly came out again, but this time, the ladle was filled with water. She squatted on the ground and spread out the glasses. Then, she began to fill the glasses one by one and handed them to the zombies. Lin Qiao gave each of them 3 glasses and let them take the glasses away after drinking. "Don't break the glasses. If they break, don't come to me for water." Chapter 279. The 5 zombies took the cup away like it was a treasure. Only Meng Meng stood at the side and stared at the scoop in Lin Qiao's hand. Lin Qiao said, "Here you go." Lin Qiao speechlessly threw the red scoop to her and went downstairs. On the 6th floor, she saw Tong Tong and Lin Xiaolu running around the corridor playing with Xie Dong. Lu Jun took a chair and sat at the door of her room, but she didn't see Qing Wangxue. As long as Lin Xiaolu was there, she would be there. Seeing Lin Qiao come down, Lu Jun put down the book and asked, "How many days have you been on the roof? Have you subdued the zombie leaders? How is Lily?" Lin Qiao walked over and leaned against the wall. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and shook her head. "It's not difficult to subdue the zombie leaders Lily brought back, but they are only at the same level as Lily. It's a bit troublesome, I can't deal with her for now. But Lily seems to be able to completely subdue her. Lily is in my space now. I just went in and asked Man Man to help her activate it. I don't know how long it will take." Lu Jun nodded and said, "I feel that the 2 you released seem to have a different aura. Your lake water is becoming more and more useful. Is it related to Man Man's level up?" Lin Qiao nodded and said yes. At this time, she saw Lin Xiaolu suddenly stop and turn her head to look at her in confusion. Then Lin Xiaolu slowly walked towards Lin Qiao. Lin Qiao saw her walking towards her and asked with a smile, "What's wrong?" Lin Xiaolu walked in front of Lin Qiao and stared at her stomach. Then she looked up at Lin Qiao with her big eyes. Lin Qiao looked at her strangely. She found that she couldn't sense Lin Xiaolu's thoughts even if she was close. She didn't know if Lin Xiaolu was also a spirit type and had a shielding effect on other senses. It should be a kind of self-protection ability. Lin Xiaolu then asked, "Don't you feel pain?" As soon as she spoke, Lu Jun and Xie Dong looked at Lin Qiao in confusion. Lin Qiao's eyes flashed and then she squatted down and smiled, "Don't worry, I don't feel pain. You didn't feel me, it was someone else. Not you." Lin Xiaolu's eyes were also full of doubts. She suddenly stretched out her little hand and touched Lin Qiao's forehead for a while. Then she thought for a while and suddenly asked, "Is this your space? There are 2 people in your space. Are they fighting?" Lu Jun and Xie Dong looked at each other, then looked at Lin Xiaolu in surprise. Lin Xiaolu's ability could actually sense Lin Qiao's space. Did she have to be so powerful? Lin Qiao said, "No, they are not fighting. They are undergoing treatment." Lin Xiaolu nodded, not really understanding. "Oh," Lin Qiao touched her head and said, "Go and play." In fact, Lin Xiaolu's senses were very strong. She was able to sense Lin Qiao from 3 meters away. In the future, when his ability leveled up, it would be incredible. Lin Xiaolu shook her head and said, "It's almost time for dinner. We have to go down." Then she turned to Tong Tong and said, "Tong Tong, let's go down to eat. All right. When Tong Tong heard that it was a meal, he immediately agreed. He then walked toward Lin Xiaolu. Lin Xiaolu pulled him to the stairs, and Xia Dong followed the two children down. Lin Xiao looked at Lin Xiaolu, who was like a little adult in front of Tong Tong, as if she was taking care of him. After the figures of the three disappeared, he turned to look at Lu Jun, who was still sitting still. Is Tong Tong eating with them now? Lu Jun nodded and said, well, Madam said that everyone is together anyway. It's too troublesome for me to always cook for the child alone. It's better for them to cook for the child. Tong Tong doesn't eat much anyway, and the two children eat more together. So I agreed. After that, she spread her hands and said, I don't need to eat anyway. It's really troublesome to cook a little for the child every day. She used to be very diligent, but now she was a little lazy. Lin Chao noticed her thoughts and said, you are starting to be lazy. That's why you find it troublesome. This time, Chiu Lily actually stayed in the lake for 3 days before there was any movement. Lin Chao had been paying attention to the situation in the lake. On the 3rd day, she sensed an inexplicable strong fluctuation. She flashed into the space and stood by the lake. A small whirlpool had appeared in the center of the lake. It was caused by the energy in the center of the lake. After a long time, she saw countless jade white tentacles coming out of the water from the whirlpool, waving randomly. Then Lin Chao suddenly felt a very oppressive aura coming from the center of the lake, and the aura was slowly increasing. The oppressive feeling also increased with the increase of the aura. Lin Chao felt a sense of suffocation. Damn it! Chiu Lily didn't directly break through to the 7th level, did she? Lin Chao frowned and stood by the lake under the oppressive feeling. But after a few seconds, she couldn't stand it anymore. There was a feeling of wanting to escape and stay away from it in her heart. Fortunately, when Lin Chao was about to give up resistance and turn around to leave the space, the aura suddenly disappeared. Then the whirlpool in the center of the lake slowly calmed down. The little vine's branches also calmed down and shrunk back into the water. Lin Chao breathed a sigh of relief. She finally woke up. After a while, she saw a head coming out of the water and swimming towards the shore. When Chiu Lily swam closer, Lin Chao suddenly realized something was wrong. Although Chiu Lily was still in the water, what was up with the over a meter long hair floating behind her? Originally, her hair only reached her waist at most. How did it suddenly grow below her feet? And why did she lose all her hair? But when it came to Chiu Lily, not only did her hair not fall, it even grew. Lin Chao felt that she needed to find Little Man to talk about life. Chiu Lily dragged her hair that was as long as her height and slowly stood up from the water. Then, she covered her chest and walked towards the chair beside Lin Chao. Lin Chao watched as she walked closer and asked, "You leveled up?" Chiu Lily looked at her blankly and then pondered for a while before nodding. So, like, huh? I can speak. As soon as she opened her mouth, she suddenly said something clear. Her footsteps paused for a moment. Then, her face turned into surprise. She stared happily at Lin Chao with a pair of blood-red eyes. "Ah, I can speak. I can speak." Lin Chao saw that she was so happy that she didn't want to come up to put on her clothes. She laughed and cried, "Okay, I know. Isn't this supposed to be the case? Quickly come up and put on your clothes." Chiu Lily then realized that she was still naked. Chapter 280. After seeing Chiu Lily run to put on her clothes, Lin Chao shouted towards the lake, "Little man, come here, I want to talk to you." A few jade white vines immediately emerged from the lake and swam towards Lin Chao. Then they wrapped around Lin Chao's wrist. Lin Chao squatted down and asked, "Let me ask you, why did I lose all my hair when I leveled up? But Lily's hair is so long." She looked back at Lily's long black hair, then turned to look at the vines on her hand. Little man doesn't know either. This isn't something that little man can control. Maybe mommy will grow it when you reach her level. Lin Chao, level? Does it have anything to do with level? Will all zombies grow hair crazily when they reach level 7? Little man said, "I don't know. This also depends on whether other people are the same or only Sister Lily will grow hair. Other zombies may not grow hair or they may lose hair like Mama." Lin Chao shook her head and said, "You see, Junjun didn't lose hair. There shouldn't be anyone else who will lose hair like me, right?" Little man was silent for a while, as if she was thinking hard, and said, "But Mama, your body is badly injured. You need to completely transform it before it can be activated." Lin Chao was stunned and asked in surprise, "What? I haven't been activated yet. But I can talk, can't I?" Little man said, "You can talk because little man helped to repair and transform Mama's throat because Mama's throat isn't bad." Lin Chao nodded and said, "Is that so? Okay." Little man said with some regret, Mama, the energy this time has been used up to help Miss Lily upgrade. I can't upgrade Mama anymore." Lin Chao shook her head indifferently and said, "It's okay, I will find some energy cores for you. You must be tired, take a rest first." She gradually felt that little man was a little weak. Little man obediently replied, and then she let go of Lin Chao and went back into the lake. Lin Chao looked at the energy density in the lake and thought that this energy should be the energy filtered out from little man's body. Turning around to look at Chiu Lily, she saw that her long hair had been dried by her own fire element. She was fiddling with it on her head. Because it was too long, she wasn't used to it and it wasn't easy to tie it up. At the very least, it was a little troublesome to tie such long hair into two high ponytails. Lin Chao wasn't good at tying hair, so she could only say to her, "Why don't we go out and let Junjun tie it for you? I don't know how to tie it so long." Chiu Lily's hands paused for a moment, and a helpless expression appeared on her face. She pouted and said, "Why is it so long? Why did you lose all your hair, but I grew twice as long?" Lin Chao heard that her voice was even sweeter than before, not as hoarse and unpleasant as her own. Was it really because of his high level? She held Chiu Lily's hand and the two of them left the space. Lu Jun, Xie Dong, and even Meng Meng were all waiting for her to come out. Because as soon as Chiu Lily appeared, Meng Meng, who had been staying on the roof, suddenly appeared on Lu Jun's windowsill. "Ow, ow." Meng Meng saw Lily with disheveled hair and called out uncertainly. Lu Jun looked at Chiu Lily's vertical black hair that fell directly from her head to the ground, straight like a waterfall. Her eyes inexplicably lit up. "Wow, such beautiful long hair." Seeing Lu Jun's inexplicably bright eyes, Lin Chao couldn't help but think it was funny. Lu Jun acted as if he had seen a fun toy. Chiu Lily said in a sweet voice, "Yes, it's grown out. It's too long, can I cut it?" Originally, she wanted to cut it, but after seeing Lu Jun's eyes, she inexplicably felt as if she would do something wrong if she cut it without her consent. "No." Sure enough, Lu Jun shouted. She hurriedly ran to her side, picked up her long hair, and said while touching it, "It's a pity to cut such beautiful hair. Don't cut it, I'll help you tie it. You can tie it however you want." Xie Dong looked at Lin Chao with a puzzled expression. Lin Chao shrugged at him. Sometimes, a man wouldn't understand a woman's obsession with hair. Look, Lu Jun saw this long hair. He could even ignore Chiu Lily's level 7 pressure. Although Chiu Lily had purposely concealed her aura, the level suppression could still be felt at such a close distance. Meng Meng looked at Chiu Lily and finally confirmed that she was Chiu Lily. She sat on the windowsill with her back facing the outside and swung her legs. Lily was stronger than her again. She couldn't beat Lily in the first place, and now it was even more impossible. Not to mention fighting, she would probably be sent flying with a slap if she made a move. But how did she do it? Was it because of her kind? Could he become as powerful as Lily? Meng Meng looked at Qiu Lily and then at Lin Qiao. Her intuition told her that Qiu Lily suddenly became stronger, and it must have something to do with Lin Qiao. Because Qiu Lily disappeared with Lin Qiao before, and then came out together. But as soon as she came out, she became so much stronger. But she didn't think about it for long, because she was immediately attracted by Tong Tong, who was sleeping on the bed. Qiu Lily said to Lu Jun, "I want to tie it the original way, but it's too long now," she said with a conflicted expression. Lu Jun immediately pulled her to a chair and turned around to take out the comb and hair band. She said, "Watch how I tie it, I'll teach you." Lin Qiao looked at Tong Tong, who was taking a nap, and then looked at Meng Meng, who was staring at Tong Tong with bright eyes. She said to her, "This is Tong Tong, you can't take him away like last time. You can't hurt him, understand?" Although she knew that Meng Meng didn't have any evil intentions in her eyes, she was afraid that her unintentional actions would hurt Tong Tong. At this time, Qiu Lily suddenly turned her head and said to Meng Meng fiercely, "If you dare hurt Tong Tong, I'll kill you." Meng Meng looked at Qiu Lily, shrunk her neck, and shook her head repeatedly. Lin Qiao looked at the two's actions with amusement. Qiu Lily was really the nemesis of Meng Meng. At least with Lily here, she didn't have to worry about Meng Meng having no one to suppress. But when Lin Qiao looked at Qiu Lily again, she couldn't help but feel lucky that this child still retained her humanity, and her heart was also kind. Otherwise, with such a powerful superpower, if she did evil, it would be a disaster. She just didn't know, except for the current Qiu Lily. Were there any other second-level kings? With so many zombies in the world, it wasn't impossible for them to evolve into second-level kings. It was just that no one had met them yet. Lin Qiao thought that there should be second-level kings. But she didn't want to meet second-level kings other than Qiu Lily.